I really, really hope this works. Please, please work. Hello. Oh my god. I'm about ready to scream when it comes to my internet. I have no idea what the hell happened there. Literally, my internet went from being fine to being poof, gone, and it took everything with it. So I did manage to save the questions from the other stream. It's just like my internet was back, but the stream would not reconnect again. And I think it's a big YouTube problem is that if your internet even just drops a little, it will just cut the stream completely and you can't get it back. So I have bad problems with my internet. I have probably the most expensive internet that you can buy in order to do these live streams, and even still, it doesn't work. So, yes, I am so glad that everyone is kind of filtering over. Yeah, it's just very, very unfortunate. So hopefully, I'm not sure if anyone actually saw the message on the last stream where I was like, I'm moving streams. Okay, right, let's get back to, I'm gonna have to ask, because I literally have no idea where I was when it cut off. Because it kind of started lagging, and then all of a sudden it just went, and I've got no idea what I actually said. So yeah, you'll have to let me know. I was talking about, wait, did it seriously cut off all the way back at Incense? I think I was talking for like another 10 minutes before I even noticed. Well, that is unfortunate. Oh my god, I was literally talking for like another 10 minutes. I want to cry. I wanted to cry. Okay, so I have no idea what I said after that then. If we were on Incense. Wait, so that is such a long time ago. Oh my god. So did I answer the question about the person who has someone trying to force their magical practice on them? Or anything about lunar magic? No. Okay, cool. So let's go back 15 minutes then. And yeah, okay. So I can't get over that. I can't get over. Yeah, what I said after the strong incense, I said if you have migraines or if you have sensitivity to fragrances, then go for a different brand because Sacha is exceptionally strong, and with strong incense, especially Sacha, it's intense. So I would say if you want super duper strong incense, Sacha is really, really good. If you want something a bit more subtle, then the other brands might be a little bit better. I'm gonna have to like keep an exceptionally watchful eye on my internet now, just in case. I am not risking it. And then after that, it was, what should you do if someone is trying to teach me their line of witchcraft, but I don't want them to, and they won't accept no for an answer? And that is very much a tell them to shove off is probably the best way that I can say it without having to swear. Everyone within witchcraft is going to have a slightly different practice. It's a craft, it's personal. Every single person is going to be unique in it. And so if you have someone in your life that's telling you that you have to learn it their way or you have to practice it their way, then it could be a good time to go, bye, I'll see you soon. Because like you have the right when it comes to your own spirituality and your own magical practice to decide what it is that you want out of it and that you want to learn from it. And so if they are trying to override your own personal goals, then I would just say, back off. I'm happy to be around you, whoever it is, whether it's friend or family, but you just can't force your opinions on me, and just kind of go from there. Because I think everyone at some point, or at least a lot of people, have got into a sticky situation where they've been practicing something that they don't really want to because they feel as though they have to. I still have a lot of questions in the other stream. I still have the questions up, but it's just you couldn't see me, which was really annoying. When should I change my altar from Samhain to Yule? You can really do it whenever. I personally don't think I'm going to actually be doing a Yule altar this year, mainly because I don't have the space for it. Some people will have already switched over their altars. Some people want to hold out just a little bit longer. It really is entirely personal. And then the next question that I had was on lunar magic, how to best learn lunar magic, any book recommendations, any website recommendations. So I nearly fell off the sofa to reach this, and you guys didn't even see it, which is sad. Sad, really. This one is really, really good. This is Moon Spells by Deanne Alquist, and I think they've written a couple of other books, at least one other on lunar magic, and really, really good. I've never read her other book, but I have read this one, and this one is really, really good. You can find it almost everywhere, and it goes into a lot of things from directions to the different moon phases, the different types of moons, a little bit of different spell work and rituals, and it's generally just pretty good. It's just a case of, if you want more understanding before you start doing spell work, maybe the other book is better, because this one is very specifically kind of spell work. The other goes a little bit more into kind of understanding the basis of it all. Where else was I? I can't believe I lost, I've answered so many of these questions already, and poof, 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 gone. Just gone forever. So there was one that I answered, which was on when should you start physically practicing. I've had a lot of people say to wait and read first, but I lose interest if I can't do things. Now, the reason that people tell you to wait is because you need to have a basic understanding of how magic works and how to get it to work before you can actively do spell work. And it's why a lot of practitioners like myself don't like spell books being recommended to beginners, because it gives people the idea that you can read a spell off a sheet of paper without any energy, without any understanding of what you're doing, and it's magically going to work because that's how spells work. When really you need to have an understanding of your energy. You need to be able to control your energy, develop your energy, raise it, manipulate it, release it. You need to understand protections, shieldings. You need to know how to get yourself out of any situation that you might get yourself into. And you also need to know how to focus and calm the mind. That can be through meditation, but there's lots of other different techniques as well. And the reason a lot of people will tell you to not immediately jump into spell work and ritual is often because it's not a good idea. If you don't know how to make magic, if you don't know how to make magic manifest, then you're just going to disappoint yourself when a spell doesn't work. So I'd say when you know you're ready is when you know that you're ready. So for instance, you will just know exactly what you need to do for working, and you'll know how to get yourself out of any difficulty. That is probably when I would recommend starting. Otherwise, it can get a little bit tricky and you might get yourself into situations that you can't get out of. Where else was I down here? I don't know if I thanked anyone for their donation. So thank you again to Valerie. I'm not sure if I mentioned it at the time. I know I mentioned it at the time, but I'm not sure if it had gone off by that point. And then there was this question, which was, are there any books to help with learning to read tarot cards? Now, There is one book that I always go back to, and I'm not going to get it down because I probably will fall off the arm of the sofa. It is called Tarot, and it's by Hay House Basics. I'm pretty certain that you can just Google like Hay House Basics Tarot, and it's a fantastic book on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. Now, of course, there are multiple tarot systems. Most are based on the Rider-Waite-Smith, so I'd have to check with your deck whether or not it is a Rider-Waite deck. Most are, honestly, that you can buy very commonly. And that is a fantastic book on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. If you are working on Thoth, that is like a whole different tradition in itself. So you might need to look elsewhere for that. But that is the book that I always go back to. Of all of the books on tarot I've ever owned, that is the one I always go back to. Right. Oh yeah, Health Friendly is here somewhere. Whoa. I just tried to fit all of the words in that sentence out of my mouth in like one word. Did not work. Yeah, Health Friendly is bouncing around somewhere. I actually need to make him a mod. So if you can like post a comment, that'd be great. Hell, I would appreciate it. Tips on starting your first grimoire. So grimoires, books of shadows, anything like that, I would say don't immediately kind of jump in with what you think you might need. So for instance, I know that when I started, and a lot of my friends, when they started, they made like a contents list, but then really quickly found that the contents list wasn't big enough for everything that they were putting in the book. So I would say, if you want to start, don't hold yourself to an exceptionally high standard. I know that a lot of people post very beautiful images of their book of shadows or grimoire, whatever you want to call it, on social media. But if you, I completely forgot the words then. If you are just starting out, it's much better to have that information down on paper than to try really hard to tea stain everything and get stressed out about the way it looks. I have a full video on tips for books of shadows and the things that I've learned along the way that I wish I'd have known at the very start, because a lot of my books of shadows, I kind of butchered them because I was scared to make a mistake. I ended up making more mistakes. So that is probably a good video if you are interested in more tips, because that has like a bunch in it. What's your favorite crystal? I always go back to clear quartz, mainly just because it is so useful. It's just so multi-purpose. I don't use crystals as much as I used to, but the one crystal I will always go back to is clear quartz, because it is just, it's perfect. Do you feel the increased energy from your neighbors being home more? I don't feel an increased positive energy, that's for damn sure. I enjoy living here. However, I have found that with my neighbors being in all the time, it gets a little bit annoying. I say that because one next door neighbor has a small child. I don't think he's that small anymore though. I think he's like 11. And the other neighbor has a dog, and I love dogs, but he barks a lot. A lot. So if anything, I don't necessarily feel higher energy from them, but I've noticed that my energy is very much out of control compared to the way it normally is. I'm a very solitary person. I'm used to, working by myself, being by myself, and having control of my energy. And since I left university too long ago now, Jesus, 3 years ago ish, kind of, I don't know, a while ago, since I left kind of a city and it was like lots of people around and I was constantly interacting with other people, I haven't been like having so much control over my personal energy and shielding, because I haven't needed to, because I've been by myself. But ever since everyone's kind of come back home again and everyone is in their houses, it's like, it's stressful. It's really stressful. And I don't like it. I don't mind them being in. I find it particularly stressful. And like my energy is just going like crazy half the time. Oh no, did you just stream for a long time to no one? Is that the context? Yes, that is literally what I did on the last live stream. I had no idea that the stream had actually stopped. And I'd been talking for like 15 minutes, which honestly is no different than what my life usually is, I suppose. What do you think about angels? I think that they are a spiritual being that I personally will avoid. Not for any like malicious reasons, just because angels kind of scare me. It kind of freak me out. The whole Christian rendition of angels, like the modern Christian rendition of angels, just doesn't work for me. It's like, oh, look at this beautiful figure dressed in white, when actually angels are like covered in eyes and kind of freaky, and they kind of scare me. So my opinion is, don't assume that just because it's called an angel, it's very, very nice and it's going to be nice to you, because just like all spiritual beings, you never entirely know what they are thinking and what they are going to do next. And it's really important to not humanize them. I think that's my biggest issue when it comes to people working with angels, is people have a tendency to humanize them. And is the word anthropomorphize? Is that the right word? That doesn't sound right. You know, like when you give animals like human characteristics, even though you know that it's an animal that doesn't have human characteristics, people have a tendency to do that with angels, where they will consider them to be nice and friendly and human-like without realizing that they aren't really human-like. So I do tend to steer clear. Would you ever make an Amazon wish list? I want to buy all your books to review. I don't know. I am uncertain about where I stand with Amazon, mainly because being in the witchcraft community and having a witchcraft business, I have found that Amazon does more harm than good for the community as a whole. They often resell items at the cheapest price imaginable, and they undercut all other witchcraft sellers. And Amazon doesn't care about the witchcraft community. They don't give a shit. You know, it's Amazon, it's a giant corporation. And so I personally would rather get my books from indie sellers. I know that there is currently, they've just released, I think, a new online shop that is the competition for Amazon, but it sells through bookshops. So maybe I should do a list on there instead, if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe. I'm so paranoid about my internet now, like I'm constantly checking it just in case. What are your thoughts on the show Always a Witch? I've actually never seen it. Is that the Spanish show? I tried watching one and it was entirely in Spanish. That might have been it. If that is it, I watched the first episode and I enjoyed it, but then I didn't watch anything else because I have a really bad habit of working whilst I'm watching TV, and I am unfortunately not fluent in Spanish. So I have to read subtitles, which isn't a bad thing if you're like focusing on the TV, but I have a tendency to, I'm a workaholic, so I basically work while I'm doing everything else. So I enjoyed what I saw, but I didn't watch any more of it. What do you do with the money from your money bowl spells? Same with all money spells. I typically don't spend the money. You typically want to keep it, because that way you are keeping the money that's spelled with prosperity in your kind of life. So I would say keep it in your purse, keep it in a wallet, keep it in a piggy bank, keep it somewhere where you're not going to spend it. And then it will continue to help attracting money into your life. And that applies with basically every money working, from candle spells to sachets to dream magic, whatever it is. If it's for money, keep the money that you're using. Don't give it away. Otherwise, you're giving that abundance that you've added onto those coins to someone else, and then they'll get lots of money back, but you probably won't. Oh, if only there was a spell to make my internet better. No, unfortunately, that is just the downside of a global pandemic. My internet is usually really, really good. It's just with everyone being at home all of the time and working from home, it's getting a little hectic, especially because, I mean, I think next door is on the same internet as me, and he likes to play games a lot, like stream games. So it gets kind of tricky. I'm still trying to understand the communication some people have with their gods. Are they really hearing the god speaking to them, or is that just their imagination? How to differentiate? Very easy, really. If your imagination can't think of something, then it's not your imagination. It's not like it varies for everyone when it comes to deities. Some deities will come to you in dreams, some during meditation, some will come to you in trance states, some will come to you in astral form, some will come to you during journeying, like out of body journeying that's not necessarily astral, like in the astral plane, more just like journeying elsewhere. Some people will come through in tarot cards and readings, in scrying, in loads of different forms. It isn't like someone necessarily talking to you inside your head for everyone. It is like that for some people, but not everyone. It's very easy to differentiate between the two. Very easy when it happens. And I think it's difficult to explain because unless you've experienced it yourself, it's hard to identify the differences. But when you are thinking something, when you're imagining one that is like laying out what is happening. So for instance, in dreams, especially if you can lucid dream, for instance, you are the one that's laying out the steps that take you from A to B. But when you have a deity or a spirit enter your dream, it turns into absolute chaos and you have no control over it. It's difficult if you can't. I kind of chose a bad description of this. If you can't lucid dream, then that's kind of what dreams are like anyway. But it's sort of like in meditations, if you are meditating and everything is really, really peaceful and you are completely calm and there's no reason for anything to suddenly change, if then all of a sudden your mindscape just completely turns upside down and there's figures there that you've never seen before, that there's no reason to be there, then it's worth taking note of it. So I think it's important not to classify everything necessarily as being a deity, but when it happens, you know that it's happening. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but I kind of hope it did. Who was the author of the Moon Spells book? Diane Alquist. It is spelled like this. I have a weird question. Can I include teeth in spells and how? I found out that my parents save all my baby teeth. So essentially, when it comes to using things like teeth in spells, you can do it as a tag lock. So a tag lock is essentially an item or something that symbolizes you. So people will use blood, saliva, hair, nail clippings, signatures, photographs, full names, dates of birth, anything that kind of belongs to you. So clothing and baby teeth. So if you want to connect a working to you, you can always use baby teeth in that working. It's a little bit of an unusual thing because I suppose not many people have access to their baby teeth, I suppose. But you definitely can do it to act as a tag lock to add it onto you. So obviously it's not going to work if you're doing workings for other people. But if you're doing workings for yourself, then it can be good to kind of latch that energy onto you. The only thing that I suppose it depends person to person is it might latch itself onto a different version of you, if that makes any sense, because obviously you are no longer the same person you were when you had the teeth. I don't know, that kind of gets into a whole different topic, but it's interesting to think, would it attach itself onto you now, or would it impact your mindset of how you were before? I don't know. I went just down a rabbit hole there. I do apologize. Can you recommend some other sources that I can research and study? You're gonna have to be more specific, mainly because that could be just anything. I'd love to hear about brownies as well. I mean, anything in particular about brownies, let me know, because it's kind of depends on which brownie you're interacting with, I suppose. Can you please repeat the name of the book on how to develop spellcraft you talked about in one of your book recommendation videos? That was out of print and had a purple color. Oh, that book. Okay, yeah, it's not out of print anymore. They've actually brought it back. I think it's you guys all attempting to get that book. It's called Before You Cast a Spell by Carl McColman. And I have it here somewhere. I'm just not certain on the where. Actually, where is it? I don't know. I shouldn't have reorganized my bookshelf. It's called Before You Cast a Spell by Carl McColman. And it is a no-nonsense, no bullshit guide to beginner witchcraft. It does have an aspect of Wicca in it, but for all the beginner books I've ever read, it's the one that I can look past the Wicca the most, if that makes any sense. So it does have Wicca in it, but you can definitely read past it. Have you ever tried working with Ouija boards? What is your opinion about it? I just noticed that there are many misconceptions and everyone is talking about how dangerous it is. I've never worked with Ouija boards. I've worked with spirit boards, but as far as I'm concerned, they're basically the same thing. People are just over dramatic. And now that isn't me saying that people don't have bad experiences with Ouija boards, but I think the term Ouija board has a lot of bad reputation. It has a reputation that it doesn't deserve, because people are like, oh, I will use an angel board to connect with angels, but they won't touch a Ouija board when they're literally the same thing. It's just one has a brand name and the other doesn't. And I think that's where a lot of my frustration with spirit boards kind of comes in, is that especially within there's a certain aspect of the community. I'm going to call them the love and light folk. That's not bad on anyone that is part of the love and light kind of approach to it. But you often find that a lot of the people that are very love and light do have a very positive perspective on like angel boards, but they'll have a really negative association with Ouija boards, and they'll almost verbally abuse and shame anyone that uses a Ouija board, but they love using their spirit board. And it's like they're literally the same thing. And I think a lot of people really forget that. So I'd say my opinion on them is treat them with the same amount of respect that you would treat any spirit interaction. Ouija boards are sold as a game, and they really shouldn't be a game, because spirit interaction isn't. Just like working with pendulums, just like with table tipping or using a glass as your kind of planchette thing, interacting with spirits is always going to be a hazard, because you don't necessarily know who's coming through. So whether that's angel boards, spirit boards, or Ouija boards, I think it's really important to always take care, always have your protections, always be nice, don't be a dick to the spirits, because they might not be quite so nice back to you again. So yeah, it's just one of them where I think they all need respect, but Ouija boards definitely have a bad reputation. I don't even know what that song is. This is how we do it. I don't know why I've got that in my head. It's just one of them things today, I think. Are you and Health Friendly rekindled? Sorry if that's too personal. Wishing happiness. We are friends. Well, we've always been friends. We've never not been friends. We've just been kind of friends behind the scenes. He's not really been on the channel since. We've not really we've been in a pandemic, so there's not really much we could have done, honestly. Like there's not really much we could have gone and like Instagrammed it or anything. So yeah, no, we're still friends. It's just like he's not like here or anything. How do you make brick dust? I don't know. I'm assuming that brick dust is just red brick dust. So smashing it? I love how someone just said with a hammer. I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably the best you're going to be able to get there, I think. I always see grimoires that are made with blank pages. Can I still make a grimoire with a lined notebook? Of course, yeah. Like it's literally just a diary, a book of shadows, a grimoire, whatever you want to call it. It's just a journal of your magical practice. So you can use whatever you want. There are people that use online documents like Word documents, OneDrive. There's people that use diary apps, people that use just plain notebooks. Some people use binders and folders. Other people will use kind of the fancier leather books of shadows. Everything is valid. It just really depends on what you need. Like some people will choose aesthetics and go for a really nice kind of bound book. Other people would rather go for something easier like a notebook. It's really all personal. It's gonna jump. Ah, I knew it. I forgot where I was again. I've got to go all the way back up to where I was. Oh my God. I don't know where I was. It's so far down. Just keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling. What did you study? Oh, okay, right. I think this is the first one. I don't know. What did you study in university? I studied zoology with marine zoology. So not even remotely related to this. But yeah, no, that's what I did. Do, do, do. Angels look so scary to me. Wait, what? Everyone's like personification. Anthropomorphize. I don't know which one it is. Humans are terrifying too. They definitely are. Definitely are. Is it possible to cast spells while dreaming, whether intentional or not? It's difficult because I'd say to cast a spell is to intentionally energize an intention. So I suppose all spells are intentional, or all magical workings are intentional. It's just whether or not you were actively thinking while doing it. Does that make any sense? So I suppose you could cast spells like in dreams, but it would be something that you already were thinking of doing, if that makes any sense. Like you have to have that mindset already in place to do it. We need to see the puppet dance. I don't actually know where the puppet is. I redid the room, and since then I've basically lost everything that was in here. So yeah, I'm not sure where the puppet is. It's probably in my apothecary cabinet. Probably. But I'm not certain. It keeps jumping around tonight. I'm not really certain on where I am, so I apologize if I've missed anything. Is meditation necessary for witchcraft? No, but it can be exceptionally useful. So while meditation in itself isn't required, it can be useful as a technique to clear the mind of kind of invading thoughts so that you can truly focus on your intention while you're doing ritual. But there are lots of other techniques that don't use meditation but have the same outcome. So there's lots of different things that you can use. So if you don't want to meditate or you can't meditate, there's lots of different types of meditation. But then there's also lots of other techniques that might help with focusing the mind. Mainly when it comes to witchcraft, people use meditation to clear out the kind of encroaching thoughts so that they can focus on the one thing that they want to manifest. But if you have a different way of doing that, then that is completely valid and you don't need to use meditation if you can do it in another way if you don't want to. It's just people often recommend meditation because it is a very well-known practice that a lot of people do use, and there's lots of information about it, and there's lots of different options from like sitting meditations to guided meditations. Personally, my brain is running at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, so guided meditations are basically the only thing I can do because I'm always thinking of something else. And I also talk ridiculously fast unless I'm purposely slowing myself down, so you can tell my brain is like 9 times out of 10. Some people say to me, oh, you talk so slow in your videos. I'm like, it's because I have to purposefully slow myself down. Otherwise I sound like a freaking chipmunk. You know that, is it Hammy? The movie Over the Hedge, where they give the squirrel sugar. Is it sugar? And suddenly time starts moving slowly. That is what it's like when I talk at like normal speed. What's your take on lucid dreaming? I'm in the sense of learning how to take control. I really enjoy lucid dreaming, and to get to the point where I'm at now, I've used a lot of dream journals. Sorry, always reminds me of Lava Girl and Shark Boy. I hate that film, but I remember that. I remember he stole my dream journal. And I find them exceptionally useful. So the way I've always done it is I have a notebook. I used to have a notebook by the side of the bed, but I've now found a better way of doing it that's really useful if you're sleepy. So as soon as I wake up, I will grab the notebook and I will write down everything that I remember as well as a date so that I can kind of track through the progress. And it doesn't matter how like blank it is. I know that a lot of people are like, well, I don't really remember, so I won't bother writing it down. Anything that you can remember, even if it's just like a color or a name or a sentence that was said, a location, anything that you can remember from that dream, write it down. And then over time, your brain acknowledges that you want to access the thing that you dreamt of. And so slowly but surely, you start being able to recall the things that you dreamed about. And I found that to be fantastic. It's a little slow, it takes a while to get there, but you will slowly start seeing progression with it. And I have found personally, if you use the Notes app on your phone, I don't know if I have an iPhone, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but I have like a Notes app. And if you use the dictation aspect of the Notes app, it's so easy. You wake up, it's like 5 a.m. and you're like, oh, I got to write this down. So you grab your phone, you click the dictation button, and then you just talk. You just talk for like 5 minutes, and then you just put it down and it's just saved, and then you don't have to think about it. So that's a way I like doing it, because I hate mornings. I hate mornings. And now I have the hiccups. Oh, what is this? Oh, thank you so much, Jenlyn. That really, really means a lot to me. Oh, everyone's so nice. Thank you. As I said in the last stream, I'm terrible at saying thank you, just like I'm terrible at saying goodbye. So apologies, I'm not particularly good at that. Any ideas for keeping up with witchcraft when traveling? I'm walking around the UK perimeter in March, and perimeter in March, and I want to get as many witchy ideas beforehand as possible. I would say bring something with you that kind of contains items that you might want to use. I've used a lot of like mint tins before, or metal, what are they called? Metal pencil cases, the ones that just kind of clip shut, and then you can put, tea lights, a lighter, anything else in there, make it like a little travel altar or a little travel kit if you don't necessarily use an altar. Another thing I like is I love Kindle Unlimited. Not sponsored. I just really, really enjoy it. There's lots of witchcraft books on Kindle that are available on Kindle Unlimited that you can just like, I think it's a bit like a library service, except you pay for it. So it's like, I think it's like £7, something like that. And you can download 10 books at a time on the Kindle Unlimited library and read them. And then you essentially just give them back once you finished, and then just like switch them out for a new one, especially when I was like doing events and stuff, because it means I don't have to carry a bunch of books with me. Instead, if I do want to read a book in any section of spare time that I might have, I have it just like on a phone, and they're just all in like one compact place, which I really, really like. Hi, Hearth. Any plans for Yule yet? I have no plans for Yule. I am putting up my Christmas tree next week, and that is as far as I've got. Honestly, I am just so drained with just everything that's going on in the world right now that I just haven't really thought about it. It makes me nervous when all of a sudden the number of people on the stream drops, because it makes me think that my internet went. Like, it's that moment of panic. It's that oh shit moment of, wait, did I just lose everything? I think it's all right. I think it's all right. I did, however, jump down to the bottom, so now I have to find where I was again. Okay, I think I was here. Wait, was I here? Oh, yeah, there's the lucid dreaming question. Okay. I think I found it. Okay, there's the Yule question. Okay, I got it. It's the downside of when it jumps, I always lose where I am. How do you start? I'm assuming that question is, how do you start working with the Fae? So when it comes to the Fae, I would typically say education first, actively practicing with them later, because the Fae are tricky buggers. I personally always recommend reading a lot of books on the subject, particularly folklore books. You often find that books that are written now completely glaze over all of the horrific things that the Fae have done. And it's one of them where they like to make the Fae seem like cute little flitty things when they're really, really not. So there are a few books that I like. I am going to be doing a full video. I know I said that I was going to do that weeks ago, but life gets tricky. So one book that I really, really like is The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries. It's a relatively affordable book. And then the other one is British Goblins. And they were published in about 1875 and 1912, something like that. And they go over the historic folklore of Fae within the British Isles, typically, but a lot of those also translate to other areas of the world as well. And it goes over actual first-hand accounts of people that experienced the Fae in their day-to-day lives during the Industrial Revolution in Britain. So it covers people who remember the Fae back into, the 1700s. And it goes over a lot of the folklore, the things to avoid, the bad things that they've done. And it kind of gives you a really good understanding of what to be careful of, because a lot of books now, they fairy gloss over everything. They make everything to do with fairies seem really cute and adorable when it definitely isn't. When it comes to working with the Fae, I enjoy... Let me see which one it is. I think it's that one. A Witch's Guide to Fairy Folk is good. I love the book by, what is her name? Morgan. Is her name Morgan? There's a YouTuber who talks about fairies, and she has a book, and it's really small and it's really good. And I am going to have to finish that video this week, because then I can actually post it. There's lots and lots of books when it comes to fairy magic, but I would say typically if you're going to be working with the Fae, it's best to understand the good, bad, and the ugly before you get started. Otherwise, it gets kind of tricky. Like, really tricky. I jumped down to the bottom again because I didn't know where I was. Found it. When doing candle magic, hex, money, etc., if the candle goes out before the wax is finished, is that a bad sign, and what do you do? The answer to that entirely depends on why the candle went out. 9 times out of 10, the candle going out is something completely normal. Usually it's that the wick is too small for the size of candle. This is particularly common in really cheaply made candles. Sometimes it just doesn't burn the wax off enough and the wick gets smothered by the wax. Sometimes the wick curls in on itself because it's not the right kind of wick for the candle, and so it can also put itself out. Sometimes it just hits a wall of wax that's particularly hard or cold and it snuffs itself out. So I think it's really important when going into candle magic to be able to notice why the candle has gone out. It could be that it doesn't need any extra energy going into that working, that it's already got enough. It can also mean that there's no point in continuing the working because it won't manifest. That's where divination really comes in to tell how that working is going to finish. But if it is something completely normal, which it probably is, 9 times out of 10, I find that most of the magical things that happen when it comes to candles are usually just completely normal that people tend to overlook. So it could be completely natural. I dropped down again because I'm sure that is it buffering? Is it buffering? Because I have a suspicion that it might be. It might be buffering. So yeah, when it comes to candles, I would say most of the time puts itself out by itself, just normally. Is Hell Friendly Paul, or am I completely being stupid here? Yes, Hell Friendly is Paul. They are the same person. Have you heard of or seen the shifting trend? Oh, I've lived through many shifting trends. They come and go. Shifting trends vary. When I was kind of earlier on in my practice, there was a giant werewolf phase where literally everyone under the sun was talking about astrally shifting into a wolf, or worse, actually shifting into a physical werewolf on all of the forums. And it was just kind of something we had to deal with. They kind of come and go, these kind of phases. Can you explain? Oh, wait, where was I? I don't know where I was. Ah, found it. Any book recommendations for the Sabbaths or how to celebrate them, but not a Wiccan one? There are really no books specifically on the Sabbaths that aren't the Wiccan Sabbaths, mainly because the Sabbaths come from a whole bunch of different traditions. So if you want to learn about the original form of the Sabbaths as seen in these traditions, you're going to have to look at the folklore and the traditions of the particular area where that came from. So there are some Sabbath celebrations that are from the British Isles. Some of them are from Ireland. Some of them are in France. Some of them are from Germany. So it's a case of bouncing around different traditions and finding information from them. Thank you so much, Julie. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Have you worked with thread and not magic? I have, yeah. It's not my favorite, mainly just because I prefer candles. Like a pyromaniac. But I have worked with it in the past, yeah, quite successfully to an extent. And I also add it into other workings. So if I am doing a working where I do need a piece of cord, I'll often add in not magic into it as kind of an added extra rather than doing like not magic by itself. How do you use sigils in your practice? I have 2 full videos on how I use sigils. One is how to make sigils and one is how to use sigils. You can just like search for them on the channel search bar. I love that mushroom on your chest table. Where did you get it from? I actually got it from a local garden center the other day. It's so cute in it. I'm obsessed. I posted a photo of it on Instagram and I got a bunch of people asking me where I'd got it from on there as well, but I don't really want to give away my exact location. I got it from a local garden center. Yeah, I'm not sure if anywhere else will have them, but they're very, very cute. Which book would you recommend to build on the basics to deepen your knowledge about general witchcraft? Ooh. Gotta stand up again now. Please don't fall off the sofa. 1, 2. And another one for good measure. 3. Right. Oh, radiator. Whoops. Okay, here we go. Oh, so when it comes to building up on the basics, there are 2 books that I really enjoy for this. The first one is this one. This is Spellcasting Beyond the Basics by Michael Fury. And essentially this kind of takes it amps it up a little bit. It goes into a little bit about protection, divination, psychic development, love magic, money magic, allies and helpers, so a little bit about familiars, healing, defensive magic, weather magic, and then it has a recipe book at the end as well. So it kind of goes up from kind of the very basic, centering, grounding, energy work. And it takes it up to using mirrors as spiritual portals and using mirrors in protections and how to close mirrors once you've worked with them. Compatibility in love magic and how to tailor love magic. That is for self-love, romantic love, platonic love, and everything else. It goes into a lot of really interesting stuff. A little bit of astrology is in there as well. Like, I really like this. It isn't like the most advanced book that you will ever read, but it's definitely a step above, say, the door. Is it The Key to Witchcraft? The Door to Witchcraft on Kindle that I mentioned earlier? The Door to Witchcraft. It's a step above The Door to Witchcraft, and it's a step above, say, Before You Cast a Spell by Colin McCollman. I would say it's not as advanced as something like this. I don't know if this answer actually got cut when I was talking about beginner books. This is Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Husson. Not sure how you say it. This is essentially a guide to traditional ceremonial witchcraft, but this is dense, like it's advanced for beginners. So it's not as advanced as that, but it is obviously on a different topic. The other one is a very well-loved book. This is my battered copy of Ritual, Spellcasting and Sorcery, Witchcraft Theory and Practice, with lots of little notes at the top here. This goes a little bit more advanced. It does cover some very basic principles, just quite simple things, talking about a little bit about shadow work and self-analysis, a little bit about meditation, centering, grounding, that kind of thing. It also goes into the different realms, you know, like the Hall of Records, the seventh inner plane, and it just kind of goes into a little bit into the tree that we see all of the time. Sigils are seals, a little bit about familiars and fetches and fifth faths and all of the slightly more complicated things that beginner books don't really go into. This, very similarly to this one, talks a little bit about the basics and then kind of takes it a step further. So if you are still a little unsure, it does cover some of the basic principles, but then it does take it kind of a step above. And then I did see someone asking me about amulets and talismans. This book is the one I have on this. This is, oh wow, that is a name that I cannot say. This here. It is the complete book of amulets and talismans. And it kind of goes into like using tarot cards and symbols and letters and wording and everything like that, including, what's this? Is this, what is this? Which language is this? Is this Enochian? It might be Enochian. I'm not sure. I'm not very well versed on Enochian. You got like devil trap amulets and everything like that is in here. It's a really, really good book. I've not read it all the way yet because I only got this a few months ago from a secondhand shop, but this one does look really, really good for that. And it could be good for anyone looking into kind of in-depth amulets and talismans. Checking my internet is still there. I am paranoid now, like fully paranoid. What is the best way to do a positive spells on a loved one? Candles, little jars? That really entirely depends on the type of magic that you want to work with. Lots and lots of people will work with candles. Some people will work with dolls, especially if it's for connecting with a loved one that lives further away. A lot of people will use dolls because it does give a physical representation of that person. It really all depends on your kind of personal practice. Sorry if I'm being annoying. Oh, you're never annoying. No one is ever annoying unless they're like spamming random shit in the comments. Some tips on helping meditating or focusing on intent for a person who gets distracted easily. Try something that gives your brain something to latch onto. So I have a real hard time when it comes to meditating, mainly because my brain is literally everywhere. So I use guided meditations. And the reason I like this is because I have an anxiety disorder. I am always anxious about something. So I find that with guided meditations, you force your brain to follow the route of where you're being guided to. And it kind of trains you into being able to kind of release the current present situation and focus on that one thing. So I found that guided meditations are exceptionally useful. There's thousands of them on YouTube. I find a lot of them are a little annoying, mainly because I'm not much for the, and welcome to today's guided meditation. I'm like, no, get on with it, please. I'm not an ASMR lover. Like, I don't, no. So I think it's a case of kind of flitting between different guided meditations online and seeing which ones you like. And when you find someone's voice that you really like, kind of just sticking with it. Even if you can't do it in one go to start off with, it's all about like building it up. And don't get disheartened, because you can definitely learn to focus and learn techniques that help you focus from these guided meditations, even if you don't manage to like completely finish them. I would love a video on runes you like to use. Yeah, I'm really, really sad actually. I filmed a full video on using runes, and then I realized that the color, like the white balance, was completely off, and the entire thing was completely blown out. It was all just like white. And the problem is, I think if you're a tanned person, you can get away with the ISO being a little bit off. I'm luminous. I literally glow in the dark. So for me, yeah, I'm going to have to redo that. I definitely want to, though, because runes are probably one of my favorite. They are my favorite form of divination. So I'm going to have to do that video again. Any advice when moving into a new house, especially with dealing with new sounds? Well, I'd say I'd recommend cleansing a property beforehand if you feel as though you don't want to deal with the spirits that are already present. I personally didn't do that when I moved into here, but that's because all of the spirits are pretty nice. Like, they're pretty chill. They make noise sometimes and they scare the living daylights out of me sometimes, but I think they just do that for fun. I think cleansing a space is always good. Making sure to set boundaries is really good. When it comes to sounds, a lot of the time, what was that? I mentioned sounds and all of a sudden this weird high-pitched noise started. And then when it comes to sounds, a lot of the time it is just the house and it's just a case of getting used to it. If you start seeing or hearing anything unusual that's just started, it's a case of setting boundaries. A lot of the time spirits will kind of take a step back. If you acknowledge that they're there, but you take no shit, you know what I mean? If you go, you know, I'm happy for you to be here, but ... and then you might need to set some ground rules there. Can spells be cast through the practice of yoga? I mean, I guess they can. I have the flexibility of an 85-year-old woman, so I have to say I never have, but that's mainly because I can't even touch my toes. So I'm not really the best person to ask when it comes to yoga. I am not well versed. How can you still feel spiritual while working in retail? For me, I don't connect my spirituality to my job. Like, I work in retail, but my spirituality isn't retail, if that makes any sense. My spirituality is me. My job is just something that I add onto it. So I think it's about having that divide. You can't let it take over your life, your job, I mean. If you let your job take over your life, then everything just kind of goes down the drain. You definitely have to have those definitive kind of boundaries. You remind me of Jade from Victorious. I genuinely, never did I ever think that I look like anyone before. And then all of a sudden, in the last like 6 months, I think on every video so far, I have someone saying I look like Jade from Victorious. And I didn't really watch Victorious. Like, I was always, I wasn't even really a Disney kid. I live in England. We don't really have Disney here. But I always watched like the reruns of like Hannah Montana and Wizards of Waverly Place. I never really watched Nickelodeon. And then I looked it up and I was like, do I? I don't know. But I have enough people saying it to me where I'm like, well, there has to be something. I think it might be the hair. It might be the hair that makes people think that I'm not sure. But I appreciate it because of all of the Victorious cast, I think Jade looks the coolest. Your aesthetic reminds me of Raven from Teen Titans. Thank you. I think if everyone didn't have a crush on Raven from Teen Titans when they were a kid, I know I did. So I'm just like, I just absorb the style of every children's show that I watched when I was a kid that I liked. I think that's just how this came out. I'm in a very dancey mood today. Do you have any recommendations, books, articles, videos that talk about magic in a more scientific sense? I've read Real Magic and didn't know if there were others like it. I don't really know of any, honestly. I find that a lot of books on magic, I mean, it's not the same category. It's definitely not the same category as what you're after. But I think that's why I like the Carl McColman books so much, because he doesn't have everything is beautiful and magic is everywhere and fairies and pixies and rainbows. Like, he doesn't have that kind of an approach. He has like a no nonsense, no bullshit kind of approach. But I find a lot of books are written from the magic can help with everything kind of approach. And I definitely need to find some books that definitely have a more practical approach to them. I think that would be good. You often find that it's either kind of polar opposites. It's either you have the scientists disregarding magical practice and traditional practices, or you have the very invested people that are like headfirst into the traditions. You rarely find kind of that balance in between. Did you enjoy your degree? It sounds awesome. I loved my degree. My time at uni was probably my favorite time ever. I have made the best of friends out of uni that I am still friends with today. That still watch my videos, actually. So hi, Luke. But I have just I really, really enjoyed my time at uni. I loved the course. The only thing I didn't like was the dissections, because obviously I did a natural sciences biology degree. There were a lot of dissections and I really didn't like doing them. I really didn't like doing them. But I loved the studying of it. I loved just being able to go to like 12 different classes and just learn everything in one day. It was great. Loved it. Would go back and do a master's, actually. I was thinking of it, but I ended up just not doing it. Are rose petals only for love spells? I read that they could be used to substitute any flower. Oh, I hate that. I hate it. I've seen it a lot. It's all over like Tumblr and TikTok and Instagram and everything. So when people use the phrase rose can be used to substitute any flower, it essentially means that rose has a lot of magical associations. So if an association lines up, so say jasmine is really good in like love workings, sexual love workings, and rose also has the same properties. So you can substitute jasmine out for rose because it has the same properties. But if you're using a flower, I am trying to think of a flower that doesn't have an association of rose and I'm failing miserably. But if you're using a flower, say, in a negative sense, and you're working with the plant and it has very negative correspondences, using rose instead of it isn't going to work because rose properties don't line up to the properties of the plant that you're using. So you're just going to be confusing the working. I see this a lot. I see people claiming that you can use rosemary instead of any herb. That same thing. Rosemary is used for a lot of different associations, but not everything. So while, yes, if say you're using alfalfa for money and you want to use rosemary instead, well, you can, because rosemary can be used for money. But if say you're using something like henbane or something, something nasty, then it's not really going to work because the associations don't line up. So rose definitely isn't only for love. You can use it for so many different things, but there are limits for what you can use it for because it entirely depends on kind of the properties of what it is that you're substituting it with. Oh, wish we could see the cabinet. I am planning, I've been asked for years and years and years to do a house tour. And now that this room is slowly coming together and the rest of the house is slowly coming together, I am slowly piecing together the house tour. And in the house tour, there will be the apothecary cabinet. So you can see the apothecary cabinet. I just need to clean. Like literally this section of my room looks great. If I was to pan the camera just like an inch that way, nightmare. Stuff everywhere. Are there any good books for beginners that are more light and easier to read? So the one I really like that is very light is called The Door to Witchcraft, A New Witch's Guide. It's available on Kindle. It won't let me see who actually wrote it. Tonya A. Brown. And I am like 3/4 of the way through that now, and it's a very, very light read. It doesn't go in depth at all. Not really. It's not the most intensive book, but it is a good kind of first step if you are just getting started. It's very affordable. You can find it on Kindle Unlimited, and it is just like it's what I would refer to as a bedtime book. I have books that I will only read when I'm like truly focused. And then I have books where I will read, if I'm just trying to go to sleep. And this is one of those books where you don't have to be like fully focused in order to understand it. It's broken down into really useful, easy to digest categories. It has small little like tip boxes that are really, really useful. And it's also written from a secular practice, which is fantastic because, a lot of books are written from a Wiccan perspective, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But, it is one of them things where not everyone wants a book that is written from a Wiccan perspective. Morgan Dalma. Yes, that. Thank you so much. That is the book I was talking about. Sorry, no context. Morgan, I can never say her surname. Damler is the one that wrote the book on fairies. All of the books on fairies are absolutely fantastic. I completely forgot what my sentence was going to be then and just fully repeated it. I need to find out where I was. Oh, no. I've completely lost where I was. Do you recommend Aleister Crowley for newer witches? No. Aleister Crowley is an exceptionally radical member of the community. His books are truly fascinating. Truly fascinating. He is a backwards genius, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for someone just getting started because they can be a little extreme. You know, they're a little dense. When I say little, I mean a lot. They're very dense. But they're definitely better when you've kind of developed an understanding a little bit more, I think. It jumped real bad, and now I'm not sure where found it. Any tips on acquiring tarot cards when you're still living with your parents and in the broomstick? In the broomstick. In the broom closet was what I meant to say, in the broomstick. Oh my God. I would say use playing cards. Oldest trick in the book, use playing cards. Almost every household has some, and you can read them almost exactly like tarot cards. I mean, they don't have the same, major cards, but just to kind of get started on card reading, they're very, very easy to find. They're very affordable. You can get cheap sets just anywhere in any kind of corner shop. So that's kind of a really good way to start. And then kind of go from there. Rider-Waite is a really common, easily accessible deck that you can find. And the way a lot of people, I think, are getting away with it now is that witchcraft aesthetic has become exceptionally popular, and people love drawing the tarot card. I mean, you see them on jumpers and t-shirts and prints and everything. So you can always say that you have a deck to help as like drawing aid. I don't know, something. There's usually a way that you can always do it, but if in doubt, playing cards are a really good alternative. How do I know what is a Wiccan tradition or tradition that is a thing that all... Wait, what? How do I know what is a Wiccan tradition or a tradition that is a thing that all types of witches should do when I'm reading? So essentially, the fastest way you can tell if a book is written from a Wiccan perspective is if it refers to a goddess and a god, if it refers to the Wiccan Rede or the threefold law. If you have a book that immediately goes into it and says, deities, you follow the horned goddess. No, not the horned goddess, the horned god and the moon goddess. That would be interesting though, wouldn't it? Just combine the two and just go for a horned moon goddess. I think I'm going a bit doolally. So if you immediately go into a book and it goes, you must follow the horned god and the moon goddess and the Wiccan Rede and the rule of three, then you immediately know that that book is written from a Wiccan perspective. It's written from a Wiccan perspective. And so just going straight into it, you can kind of tell. Typically, you're going to want to learn some kind of focusing technique. A lot of people will learn meditation in one form or another, how to center, how to ground, how to energy sense, how to energy manipulate. Then it will go into ideas of ethics and finding out your personal morals in a situation, and then it'll kind of move on from there. There isn't one singular path in witchcraft. Every area is going to have its own unique different traditions. So for instance, traditional British witchcraft is going to be different from, say, Strega. Very different traditions, but they're both witchcraft in their own way. So I would just say, if you don't want Wicca, avoid books that are, and you must follow the Wiccan Rede and the rule of three, because that's very Wiccan driven. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just that not everyone's after that. It's a British thing to talk fast, I think. It might be, yeah, it might be. We have to get all of the unnecessary words out in one go. That is the way it is. Oh, you can always tell when I've listened to music for the entire day. I've literally had Halsey on just all day. I've never listened to Halsey before. I've only watched her collaborations with Machine Gun Kelly and Youngblood. And then I ended up finding 3 a.m. not this morning. I found 3 a.m. this week, and I've just been obsessed over Halsey all week. It's just been ridiculous. It's been stuck in my head all day. Any tips for making witch friends? I don't have any and it feels a bit lonely. I personally really enjoy online groups. I mean, that's kind of where I started when I finally got the internet. That makes me feel old. And I really like online forums, online groups, Discord servers, especially when you find the same people in different Discord servers. That's really, really great. There's lots of online forums, things like Pagan and Witches Amino. It is a little harder to find kind of dedicated friends online, but you can. There's like Facebook groups and stuff that you can join. I always am very careful with the people that I interact with personally online because you never really know who they are. So always take a great deal of care, but definitely groups like Discord, where there's witchcraft communities, Amino, they give you a sense of community, even if you don't have the ability to go out and find people in your real life. Is a Book of Shadows only for Wiccan practitioners? Not at all. People have been noting down their magical practice in books for years. The term Book of Shadows has largely been kind of taken by the Wiccan community, but it essentially is just a personal journal of your magical practice. So that could be anything from traditional Wicca all the way up to eclectic witchcraft. It really entirely depends on the person. It's essentially just a way that you can sit and just note down everything that you've done, the things that you've learned, the things that you want to learn, the spells that you've done, the rituals that you're working on, so you have kind of a record of it going forwards. I'm colorblind. Will color correspondences still work for me if I can't see that particular color? So when it comes to color correspondence, it's largely what we associate with that color. So a lot of people traditionally will associate red with love, gold for money, green for good fortune. You will find that the color correspondences change depending on where in the world you are. So you often find that in East Asian communities, the color red is more used for prosperity than green, but it entirely depends on the practitioner. So if you don't necessarily associate, I mean, I don't know which way colorblind you necessarily are, but say if you don't really acknowledge red as being something that is for love, because for you, you never really see the color red because you can't, then use whatever you associate with it. That could be no color at all. That could be using just other things, whether that be herbs or symbols or words or scents. You know, you can get around color correspondences if you don't want to use them, or you can adapt them to suit what you can do. It's kind of entirely personal. We have like generic westernized color correspondence, you know, the whole red is for love and orange is for creativity and yellow is for money, but not everyone is going to kind of resonate with that. Can he get that song out of my head at all? Can you describe the different types of fae? That is no. Simple answer, no. Mainly because there's too many different varieties. I mean, the fae is such a large umbrella term that covers hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of different groups. You will find there are certain fae that fit into categories. So you have, say, household fae. You then have woodland fae, meadow fae, water fae. And you often have kind of identifying features in all of them. So you'll often find that house fae exist within the house and the home. They're often smaller in stature because they do have to reside within a location, whereas you'll often find that the ocean fae are more adapted to their environment. In that sense, they will often have different offerings given to them. So in the UK, for instance, a lot of people offer fish to ocean fae, and they also offer alcohol. There's one area in Cornwall, I think, where every single Samhain, they just dump like just whole barrels of ale into the ocean. Is it ale or is it lager? I'm not sure. It's booze. I don't really drink it. They just tip it into the ocean as an offering to the fae that reside in the area. So it's kind of different areas will have different fae, but within those areas there are hundreds of different fae, and it really depends on your location as to what's going to be there. I hope that made sense. I hope I still have internet. Do you read non-witchy books such as fiction? I do. I don't read them as often, mainly because I just don't have time. I love Harry Potter. I love the Shadowhunter series. The Hunger Games, that was pretty good. I do read other books. It's just not particularly often, I will admit. How could you use poppet candles? Poppet candles, do you mean like figure candles as poppets? You might have to specify on that one just so I know exactly what your thought is on that. What's your take on the Spiderwick Chronicles? The Spiderwick Chronicles is, in my opinion, the best fiction rendition of what the actual Fae are like. And I very, very frequently in videos and in live streams do refer to the Spiderwick Chronicles, as it contains so many factual pieces of information. Of course, it's important to remember that it is a fantasy book, it's a fantasy movie, but the understanding of the Fae within that series is probably the best I've ever read in any fantasy book series so far. So if you want to read a fantasy book but want to learn a little bit more about the Fae, Spiderwick Chronicles is really, really fantastic. Even the film, and that's saying something because most films butcher the original content, even the film did a pretty good job. And I'm actually really sad that they didn't continue the franchise because that would have been really, really good. What great questions. How often do you do these? I try to do these every month. Last month I failed because my internet died, but I do try to do these every single month. If you want to know when I'm going to do them, follow me on Instagram. Not the link, but like the hashtag, whatever it's called, the username. That's it. The username is always in the description of my videos. It's _hearth_witch_, and I post in the stories like when I'm going to be doing the live streams. And that's honestly where I'm most active. So if you kind of want to keep up to date with what I'm doing, feel free to follow me over on Instagram. I tend to post funny shit in the stories. Like that's just the way my life goes. What does astral projection mean? So essentially, astral projection is it's kind of hard to summarize. So I'm gonna try my best. It probably isn't going to be the best example ever, but it is the ability to separate your consciousness from your body. So it's similar to an out-of-body experience where you almost leave your body. Astral projection is the ability to often purposefully remove the consciousness from your body and take it elsewhere, often to the astral plane, which is another plane where a lot of people will have coven meetings, for instance. They will astrally project to the astral plane to do their works in the astral plane. But you don't have to go all the way to the astral plane. Some people will just astral project and then exist within the present plane and then go back again. It's a processed form of out-of-body experience. So whereas a lot of people will have out-of-body experiences without intending to, most people will intentionally try to astral project. How do you use a pendulum? I have a full video on how to use a pendulum. You can search for it on the channel. It should still be up. How old are you? I keep my age a secret. Thank you. I always say this, right? I am somewhere between Youngblood and Machine Gun Kelly, and you will just have to Google who those people are if you don't like punk rock music. But I am somewhere between Youngblood and Machine Gun Kelly. How can I tell if a spell backfired or just a thing that is inevitable happened? I did a protection spell for my family and all of them got injured, not to an extreme extent, but there was some bleeding. So I have a full video on spell backfiring that might help explain it a little bit more. Spell backfire typically backfires onto the person that did the working, not necessarily the people you're doing the working for. But one thing that can happen, especially with protection workings, is that it might have protected them from something much worse. And I think it's where it kind of gets difficult. A lot of people go, well, I did a protection spell, but this bad thing still happened. And yes, it could be that the spell didn't work, but equally it could have been that it protected as much as the energy that you put in allowed it to. If that makes sense. So it could only do so much, or it pushed them towards something less severe than what could have happened. And I think it's kind of difficult, especially when you're doing protection workings. Protection workings rarely backfire in comparison to a lot of other workings, love spells in particular, not like self-love spells, but like domination love spells have a really bad tendency to backfire. So protection spells are kind of less likely to backfire to start off with. It could have just been that it did what it could do with the energy that was put into it. Where's your broom gone? My broom is just over there. It's just like behind my ring light. I am having to wait a while. I normally have a wooden plaque here as well that I pyrographied to say Hearth Witch. But because the walls are relatively freshly painted, it's why there's no artwork up on the walls. This is on like hooks, but everything else I kind of stick to the walls. And the board and the broomstick, because they're wood, they kind of seep oil into the paint. So I want to leave the paint for as long as I can before I lean anything against it to make sure that I don't damage it, because it is like wipeable, washable paint. But the longer you leave it before you put something on it, the better. So the broomstick will probably be back. It will be behind the mushrooms where these flowers are. Hopefully. If I don't like screw it up and break it or something. Ever seen a chipmunk fall off a couch? That is how I feel when I'm reaching for books. Do you meditate regularly? I don't, not anymore. I used to do it a lot. Now I am doing some psychic awareness meditations and guided meditations at night if I feel as though I can. And I'm enjoying it. I find it very difficult to focus, exceptionally difficult, especially in lockdown. I'm really struggling to stay like focused on anything. I'm a little bit scatterbrained at the moment. So that's kind of how I'm trying to focus myself at night, because I can't sleep, because that's just the way it goes. Have you seen the American Horror Story take on witchcraft? Coven, I'm assuming. Coven. Yeah. I have some feelings about that. The first is that I hate how they always demonize African traditions. Really bothers me. It's always like, oh, the Western witchcraft is good and the traditional African practice is bad, or African spirituality is evil, or voodoo dolls. And like, oh, I know that it's a fantasy TV show. I know it's a fantasy TV show, but I'm so fed up of the media demonizing traditions outside of Western media. It's infuriating. So I like it as a TV show. I wish that they would stop the kind of misconceptions going around, because the number of times that I have people asking me if dolls are evil because they're voodoo and people stab pins into them, it just makes me want to scream. It literally makes me want to scream. Is it weird that I practice witchcraft while being terrified of spirits? No, it's not weird. I mean, you don't have to work with spirits if you practice witchcraft. Spiritual practice is obviously a part of it if you want it to be, but it definitely doesn't have to be. You don't have to work with spirits. Any thoughts on life after death, personal or in general? I personally am a firm believer in reincarnation, mainly from experiences of people I know, friends, family members, that kind of stuff. So that's just that's my stance on it. But as far as I'm concerned, there's no right answer, because no one alive knows. Your opinions on the chilling adventures of Sabrina. I really, really like it. Once again, I take it in the stance of it's a fantasy TV show. And I think when it came out, there was a lot of uproar within the magical community where there didn't necessarily need to be. And of course, there is obviously the connection of the devil's book, and you've got to worship the devil and all this stuff. And it did definitely spark an increase in comments of, when will I get to sign the devil's book, and all of this stuff. And it kind of makes me want to pull my hair out a little bit. It's a little infuriating, but equally it's a TV show, and this will come around again. We saw it with Charmed. We saw it with Buffy. We saw it with The Secret Circle and Harry Potter, and we'll see it again. Like, these kind of TV shows are exceptionally popular, and so I enjoy them at just face value for just what they are. Is there a good book or platform to research deities? That entirely depends on which pantheon you're referring to. So there is no decent good book on just all deities that exist around the entire world, because there's just too many of them. You're going to have to focus on the folklore and traditions of specific pantheons that you're wanting to work with, whether that is Celtic or whether that is Hellenic, or, whatever it might be. You're going to want to focus on the traditions and the folklore of the area, because there isn't really one big book. It's not quite as easy as that, unfortunately. Although, even if there was a big book on deities, I don't think it would necessarily have the content that you need to necessarily make an informed spiritual decision. Can I use a Ouija board to connect with general spirits, or can I contact ancestors I've never met? Can I do it solo? So when it comes to spirit boards, it's really important to remember that you don't know who's coming through. There is no 100% effective way, like birth control, of stopping any spirit from getting in. So essentially, you can open that spirit board or that Ouija board, whatever it is that you're working with, and you can call out to your ancestors. But that doesn't stop a random spirit from coming through and going, yo, I know you. And actually, they don't. I think a lot of people have the false belief that spirits can't lie. And there are some fae that can't lie, but most spirits are perfectly capable of lying, and they have no remorse for tricking you either. So I think it is very important to be careful, especially if you don't know who you're connecting with. A lot of people, if they are connecting with someone that they know personally, they'll often ask for an answer that only you and the other person would know. And that's a good way of getting a gauge, but it's much, much harder if you don't have a personal connection with them to figure out whether or not it is the person that they say they are, or if they're just trying to get into your space by just, being a bit of a dick about it and lying about it. Those books you pulled off the shelf, can you list them in your description later? I can try if I remember. If I remember, I definitely can. Do you use scented candles in your workings? If so, what kind? I typically don't use scented candles in spellwork and ritual, mainly because I just don't. I use a lot of scented candles within my personal space. I really enjoy burning candles. I burn a lot of candles safely, of course. But when it comes to spellwork and ritual, I have set candles that I use. So this chest, the brown one that is, not the green one. The green one's new. This chest has got a lot of candles in it. My other chest in the other room has got a lot of candles in it. The apothecary cabinet has a lot of candles in it, and I will typically use those as my spellwork candles. They're usually pillar candles I can carve into. They're usually plain except for a color, and that tends to be how I do it. What is your what? Oh, here we are. What are the different wards, like protections, and how do we use them? So it's difficult because different people will have different names for the same protections, if that makes any sense. So there are, which one is it? I think it's an amulet that's for protection, isn't it? Which one is for protection? I always get them mixed up. An amulet or a talisman. One is for manifesting, one is for protection. I think it's an amulet that's for protection. I have literally this book right here. Why don't I just figure this out? My brain will literally only hold so much information, and I have a tendency to I'm not reading this to try to figure out the answer off the top of my head. I think it's an amulet that's used for protection, either one of them. So you often have items that you imbue with protective energy, either in their making or afterwards, that go about in protecting. So often these are things like witches' charms, things that you put together with crystals and items and symbols, and then you imbue with energy. So they can be a form of protection. You then have things like charms. These are typically symbols that already have a protective association. So for instance, the pentacle has a protective association already. So you can wear it as it is, or you can add extra energy onto it and add it to become a stronger protection. You then have wards. These are typically self-sustaining. Usually they have an external power source. So you might use items that have a lot of power in them. You might create them at certain significant phases of the moon, or events that might happen that will give them a lot of energy. And then they essentially self-sustain off that energy until you re-imbue them with energy again. So often you'll have wards that will stay up for a year or a month, and then you have to re-energize them again. And then they live off that energy, and they'll essentially, like a battery pack, they'll just kind of slowly die down again, and then you recharge them. Then you have the shields. The shields are usually temporary. You have to put energy into them for basically the entire time that they're up. They're a very active form of protection. It's something that you have to think about and process, and that's why they're very temporary. So especially for houses, I would recommend amulets. I think they're amulets or talismans. Please don't shoot me. I'm not sure. I think it's an amulet. Watch me be completely wrong now. or you'll have like charms inside a house or worn on a person, and then you'll also have wards up for protection as well. So there's far more than that. There is a good book that I recommend on protections, which is somewhere on this bookshelf. I am just not sure where. Jason Miller. Protection and Reversal Magic. Ha! I knew it. It's called Protection and Reversal Magic by Jason Miller. It is a fantastic book. That covers a lot of different types of protection in there. Everything from active protection to kind of standalone, self-battery operated almost protection. So that's a really, really good book. What are your favorite crystals in general? I only really work with clear quartz. Clear quartz, black tourmaline. For prosperity workings, I often work with citrine, and yes, I don't care if it is heat-treated amethyst or citrine. They both have the same energy to me. And green aventurine. And that's really it, honestly. I don't really work with that many stones in my active magical practice. I have a lot that I put on altars that I just own already. But when it comes to spellwork, if I'm going to be using any, I typically just stick to clear quartz. Do you have any tips on deities? I never know which ones are Wiccan and not. Well, okay, right. I'm going to try to super simplify the Wiccan tradition, right? Super simple. Traditional British Wicca, the original forms of Wicca, like Gardenian Wicca, they worship a god and a goddess. Usually they are referred to the horned god and the moon goddess, representing the masculine and the feminine in balance. Now, when it comes to individuals, you can technically, depending on your Wiccan path, choose any two deities to represent the god and the goddess. You can also use masculine and feminine archetype energies, or you can use the horned god and the moon goddess. It's entirely dependent on you and your personal path with the Wiccan tradition. Now, there are obviously some Wiccan traditions that only worship the goddess. There are other Wiccan traditions that only worship the god. These are they just kind of all come along later. So the only deities that are very specifically Wiccan are the horned god and the moon goddess. Although versions of these deities are seen in other traditions. So for instance, Selene is a moon goddess, but she isn't the moon goddess from the Wiccan tradition. They are kind of unnamed deities. And then when you get to covens, a lot of coven deities are called oath-bound deities. And essentially each coven will have their own deities that only the people within the coven will know which deities they are. So for instance, they might have Pan and Hecate. They might have Keronos and Selene. It really is dependent on the coven and the people that are practicing Wicca within that coven. So the only two deities that are really purely Wiccan are, say, the moon goddess in the form of the Wiccan moon goddess, the triple moon goddess, and the horned god. Although there are lots of versions of horned gods and moon goddesses around the world, it's just those terms that are used within the Wiccan religion, and then each individual practitioner of the Wiccan tradition may have their own two unique deities or one unique deity, depending on which version of the Wiccan tradition you follow. This is getting complicated, isn't it? Basically, Wiccans can essentially follow whichever deities they see fit, or they can follow kind of male and female archetypes, or the horned god and the moon goddess. Did that make any sense? I think I just went way off tangent. Way off tangent. But yeah, I hope that made sense. I'm sorry if it didn't. I will have to do a whole video on Wiccan deities and breaking it down, because it does get a little bit confusing, because now there are so many different paths. I mean, you've got the Alexandrian tradition, which kind of branched off from Wicca, and then you've got traditional British Wicca, and you've got Gardenian Wicca, and then you've got Dianic Wicca, and then it all just kind of just spews out from there, and just kind of goes on, I suppose. Now, where was I? It kind of jumped, so I really hope that I've not missed it. Thoughts on servitors? In what way? I suppose is the good question. In what way? Are you into Black Mirror scrying? I have done Black Mirror scrying, yes. I typically, though, use water scrying instead, mainly because I have a cauldron. I have a gorgeous, large cauldron bowl that's black glazed on the inside, and I like using that for scrying. When I do scry, which isn't particularly often, I tend to stick to other forms of divination. What is scrying used for? So scrying is essentially a form of divination that involves identifying figures and patterns, symbols, colors, sounds that usually come from entering into a trance-like state while staring into a dark object. Wow, not like a dark object like an original's dark object, but like dark surfaces, like a black bowl with water in it or a black mirror. And essentially, by entering into this trance-like state, you allow your psychic mind to take over a little bit. You kind of like zone out. And by doing that, you're able to identify things within your subconscious that maybe you didn't realize could answer questions that you have. So a bit like how when it comes to tarot, it is your subconscious mind that can assist with the readings. Scrying is a little bit like that, except it doesn't necessarily use tools like runes or tarot. And I have hiccups again. Do you sing? I do sing. I think my neighbors are very annoyed with me singing, but I do sing. Yes. Yes. Very embarrassingly, and not very well, I might want to add. Can you do tarot reading while not knowing what every card means, but looking it up afterwards? I mean, you can, yes, because it is knowing when to stop is based on your subconscious telling you, like, yes, it is time to stop shuffling now. And then you deal the cards, and your subconscious mind has already kind of chosen the cards. And then as you're reading the information about them, it's about looking into the imagery of the card and seeing what comes forward. So sometimes when it comes to reading cards, it isn't about what is written on the paper. It is about the things that draw your eye, the things that are significant within that card that your mind is going, yes, that is what you need to focus on, that bit. And so that can be a good way of doing it, is look into the imagery of the cards, not necessarily the meanings, to really help with that. I apologize if I'm kind of missing any comments that I've already answered kind of before, mainly because I can't be on for too long and I kind of don't want to constantly be repeating myself. So if I have missed your question, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I might try and do some Q&As on Instagram. I don't know if I should put a poll out and just do like a little story Q&A kind of thing for any kind of little questions, because that sounds like it could be fun. Does your house tour include the cement garden? I mean, it can do. Yeah, I need to work on the garden really, really bad. But my hope is that eventually I will be able to not be here anymore, and then I will have somewhere with an actual garden instead of having to like dig up a bunch of like gravel and stuff to make a garden. How would you suggest to get started on spells? In what way? In what way? Okay, so I'm going to really briefly touch on this thing because a lot of people are talking about White Sage and Palo Santo. So I think it's difficult because it really depends on who you talk to. So I am not going to pretend to be the almighty, all-knowing force because I'm just not. When it comes to using White Sage, it's really important to not be taking it from locations that are sacred to Indigenous peoples, because a lot of the time there are people that illegally gather it from places of sacred locations where they definitely shouldn't be. The term smudging relates to a ceremony, a tradition that is taught and learned. It isn't just lighting a stick and smoking it around a room. So the term smudging is very sacred to a specific tradition. Smoke cleansing has been common all around the world. What you use really depends on you, but it is also important to note not to step on anyone's toes. If you are going to be using White Sage, there are a lot of suppliers that do not take from native sources, but do support native peoples that grow them instead in controlled environments where their sole purpose is essentially to be bundled up into herb bundles and to be sold to people. So it's a little tricky where to fall with that. When it comes to Palo Santo, there are lots of trees with the name Palo Santo. A few of them are endangered, and so it's really important if you're going to be buying Palo Santo that you can get fallen Palo Santo, which is essentially just fallen from trees and collected. And there are some areas that do have trees that fall under the category of Palo Santo but are not the most endangered species that do still harvest Palo Santo. Once again, it's really important to do your research. Every single person that uses these products should be doing their own research on what they feel they should and shouldn't be doing, if that makes any sense, just to kind of make sure that you are comfortable in everything that you're doing. I hope that made sense. I kind of feel as though that I'm not making much sense today, but right, let's find where I was. I have no idea where I was. I have no idea where I was, so I'm gonna have to go from here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go from here. Because I can't find where I was. Does the spell Witch's Ladder work? Well, a Witch's Ladder is not necessarily... There's lots of versions of a Witch's Ladder. Essentially, it is a form of not magic technique that creates a ladder where you're adding in aspects that bring energy into a space, into it, so that in the end you end up with a finished item, a finished magical item that has energy in it. So it's a bit like saying, does a witch's bottle work? It's like, well, I mean, it depends on how much energy you put into it. Same with everything. Like, for one person, a spell might be really successful. For someone else, it might flop. And it really depends on how skilled they are, the energy, the intention that they were putting into it, and what they were after. So I think it definitely really, really varies. I'm just trying to... I love how everyone chats in the stream. It's really nice just seeing everyone getting to talk to each other. Like, everyone's just so lovely to each other. It's the one thing I love about this community, is that everyone is just so nice to each other. Your thoughts on crystals, on artificial crystals like opalite and aura quartz? So for me, I'm perfectly fine with it, mainly because, as far as I'm concerned, everything comes from the earth, right? So even things that are synthetic are created from base materials that come from the earth. So a lot of people hate opalite, right? They hate it because it's made of silica, but silica is a natural product. It's basically everywhere. Almost everything has silica in it, at least to a degree. And so for me anyway, I'm not fussed about using them. I don't mind using them at all, because they have their own energy. Even if they aren't naturally formed, they are using items that are naturally found. And I think it is a difficult situation, because some people prefer natural stones, whereas some people don't mind either way. I think it really is an entire personal practice and personal decision. Could you do a video on wards? Definitely. I will definitely be doing one, at least at some point. Oh my God, are you a Black Hearts club member? Yes, I am. I firmly stan Youngblood. Always have. Always have. It's nearly a local lad. Nearly. Not quite, but nearly. I'm trying really hard to find a question in all of this that I haven't answered before. So I do apologize if I take a while. How can I tell if other spirits like Fae are living in my house, and how should I work with them, or should I not? So generally you can tell by the energy that they give off, you can often tell, or things start moving. Now, this is obviously a little bit trickier if you live in a house with other people. Like if you are in a space with animals and pets, wait, that's the same thing. I mean, you might just have random animals roaming around that aren't pets, but if you live in a place where other people might kind of be around and move things, it's a little hard to tell. But if you do live by yourself, then it's quite easy to tell when things are moving. So especially when it comes to the Fae, you might find that like single things disappear, like shiny things, especially with household Fae, shiny things, they go missing so often. And singular earrings might disappear. Singular backs of earrings, coins might go missing. Things might just move, or you might be lying in bed at night and all of a sudden you hear something fall over. And then it's a case of trying to sense their energy. And then if you can sense their energy, then it's moving on from there and deciding whether or not you want to, you know, kind of progress from there. Do you want to work with them? Do you not want to work with them? I know a lot of people will just let them be and not work with them. That tends to be how I will be. And then kind of go from there, unfortunately. I've got no idea what I've been scrolling up for like the past 5 minutes. I think I was here. Yes, I was here. I remember the little emojis. Yes. Yes, that is the question I just answered. Okay, right. I am in the right place. Isn't black magic actually a racist term because it's demonizing African indigenous traditions? Now, that really entirely depends on how it is being mentioned. So there are lots of people who consider the term black and white magic to be considerably racist. And I have to say, I am partially in agreement with that. I don't understand why white is always good and black is always bad. Like, that makes no sense to me. The terms generally, I personally don't like using them for lots of reasons. One, it really leaves a bad taste in my mouth when you say black magic is evil. It's like, what are you referring to here? Like, are you referring to traditional practices, or are you referring to negative magic? And people often don't give you the answer to that. I don't like using the terms regardless, because there is nothing on this earth that is truly bad and truly good. I think the extreme spectrum that a lot of people live on, that isn't really a spectrum, is it? It's polarizing, just doesn't work, because what is good to one person might be bad to another. You know, if you do a spell to get a job, it's good to you because you're getting a job, but it's bad to the person that you just got the job instead of. So everything is like a spectrum. And that's why people just call everything kind of gray, because really there is no purely good and purely bad. And so I don't like using the terms for lots of reasons. Some people, unfortunately, do use the terms to be very racist in their intentions. And some people will use the terms in a way that they don't necessarily intend it to come across. It's a very difficult topic. So typically, I just refer to things as positive intention and negative intention, because I think that's an easier way of describing it. Because I've had people asking me, can I do a good luck spell that's black magic? I'm like, what? You mean negative magic? And they're like, no, like black magic, you know, like blood magic and that kind of stuff. I'm like, that isn't what that means. And that really, it's very confusing for people, I think, those terms. So I typically always try to avoid the term. I tend to use like baneful or negative rather than, you know, black and white magic, because for me it just doesn't make any sense. And there's so many people that are actually confused over what the terms mean, that I think it's just far easier to go for baneful, negative, or positive, and then just use those instead. I have a witchy space on Animal Crossing too. I do too. On my Animal Crossing house is a little, like a witchy hole. I love it. Absolutely love it. Your opinion on the craft. I'm planning on seeing it soon. I mean, are we talking about the 90s craft? Because I've spoken about this many times and I hate it. I hate the craft for many reasons. In theory, it's great, but my issue is that they went too deep with the witchcraft. Like, for one, half of what they're doing is Wicca anyway. Half of it. Some of it anyway. My issue is that they consulted with actual magical practitioners when they were making the film. So the first half of the craft film is very realistic, essentially, to magical practice, especially as it was seen in the 90s. However, the second half of the film takes a very strange turn, and it made a lot of people very fearful of Wicca and witchcraft because the first half of the film was very true to magical practice, and then the second half was like a horror movie. And so I found anyway, and I think a lot of other people within the community found that when the craft craze was happening, people often had a very negative opinion on witchcraft because they believed everything that they saw within the movie because a few things were very, very correct. I'll be honest, I've not even thought of watching the new version of the craft because I just no, not for me. Not for me. Any next plans with your hair? No, I don't really have any right now. I still have the color underneath this, obviously. I mean, you can kind of see that this side is a bit more green and this side is a bit more purple. My roots now are down to like here, I'd say, like there-ish. And it's kind of getting to the point where I can't get away with having dyed hair anymore because my roots are like so far down. So for me, I am waiting until I feel comfortable to go to the hairdressers, which has not been recently. And then I might dye it again. But honestly, I kind of like my hair dark and I miss swimming. And you can't go swimming with semi-permanent hair because the moment you touch water, it just seeps out of your hair. And so I miss swimming. I've not been training in a pool for 5 years now, and I miss it so bad. So I'm thinking of just letting my natural color grow out, at least for a while, and then maybe going back to dyed next year, perhaps. What's a good alternative to visualization? Talking your way through it. So I tend to explain it a little bit like if you're blind. So a blind person is still able to acknowledge what's going on because they use their other senses in order to paint that picture for them. So when you are essentially brain blind, where you can't visualize, you're going to have to use your other senses to paint that picture for you. So what I typically would recommend is talking your way through what you want to manifest. So instead of seeing what you want to manifest, listen to yourself tell you what it is that you want to manifest and do it that way. You can also write it down and use that as a way to kind of, you can repeat it, you can chant it, you can just say it in your head and use the words, paint the picture of what it is you want to do rather than the images. And that's kind of a good way to get around it, at least from the people that I know that have something similar. What's your opinion on symbolic tattoos? I like them. Personally, if I was brave enough and we weren't in lockdown, I probably would have lots of witchy symbolic tattoos as well, but I unfortunately don't. I feel as though this is the exact same question. How can I use a person-figured poppet candle? Are you referring to a figure candle, like a figure person as a poppet, or are you referring to a figure candle used as a candle? I think I asked that the last time I saw that question, because they are completely different uses, and calling something a poppet candle, I can't tell which way around you want to do it. Is it a candle in the shape of a person that you want to use as a poppet, or is it a figure-shaped candle you want to use as a candle? Let me know, and then I will get back to you. Can't seem to find a clear answer on how to charge sigils. Can anyone help? I have a video on how to use sigils that goes over a bunch of different techniques. There's loads of options. You can either charge them via creation or charge them via destruction. Charging them via creation is energizing them whilst you are drawing them, whether that be using magical inks or just your energy and intention. The other technique is to charge them via destruction. This is often setting them on fire, dissolving them in water, burying them in the earth. So there's 2 different ways, and then there's lots of subcategories of them, which is why there's so many different options out there. I have like a little like bird in my head that just keeps like feeding me songs. It's like, do this now. Can you practice magic if you are completely blind or deaf or any other disability that matters? And if so, how would you go about doing this? You definitely can. There are lots and lots of people with disabilities, physical, mental, whatever it might be, that still practice magic. Unfortunately, I am not going to be able to give you the best answer on how to do it, because the how depends on what you need to work around. You know, everyone with a disability is going to be slightly different, whether they are mobility disabilities, whether they are sight or hearing loss. It's very difficult for an able-bodied person to know the best way to work around it. So if anyone has any advice on that, feel free to put it in the chat, because unfortunately, I don't feel as though I'm really in the position to give the best advice, because I haven't had to personally experience that. What are your favorite spells to cast with candles? I do a lot. I do basically any working with a candle that needs to be released. I typically won't do like binding workings or anything like that with candles, because you want that energy to remain. But anything like banishing, money, protection, those kind of things, I will often do with candles if I have the choice, because I just like candles. Any tips on finding appropriate incense as offerings to deities? I'm working with Bast and Hecate and having trouble finding a good reference for incense for them. So my recommendations with this is to look up the herbs that are connected to the different deities. So instead of trying to find like herbal blends, you could try to find just standard stick incense, for instance. So you can often find, say, rose, basil, thyme, sage, rosemary, oak. You know, you can find like standard incense. It's just one thing. So if you can find some correspondence lists for each deity, and then look down and see which herbs are related to them, and then find incense that either is that thing in its entirety, like a stick incense for rose, for instance, or you can make a herbal blend of incense in relation to the things that are associated with them. So you might find that it could be, say, copal and sandalwood, chamomile, and then you can make a concoction. But obviously, if you're going to be doing that, make sure that none of the herbs that you're using are toxic or interact negatively with medication, that kind of stuff. But that is a way of doing it. Does choosing your deity mean that you don't believe in others? No, not at all, not at all. A lot of people within the pagan community are polytheistic in nature, so they believe in more than one deity, usually from multiple different pantheons. It's not that you consider that deity to be the only correct deity and everything else is nonsense. It's more that that is the deity that you want to work with, and that is the deity that you're forming a relationship with. So a bit like you might have a best friend, and if you have a best friend, that doesn't mean no one else on earth exists. Just like how choosing a deity doesn't necessarily mean that every other deity doesn't exist. It just means that they are the one that you're focusing on. I really hope that that was a good analogy. I am not sure if that was a good analogy, but there we go. That's the best we're going to get today. A spoonful of peanut butter will cure hiccups pretty well. Why though? Like, I want to know if there's any science behind that, because I mean, hiccups is a spasm of the diaphragm. So how is peanut butter going to help? Is there a proper way to shuffle a tarot deck? So there's lots of different options here. I know which way I personally shuffle a deck. Shall I find a deck? Shall I grab a deck? Oh, let me grab a deck. I'm gonna have to stand up for this. I have to move. Oh, I don't want to move. Oh. Okay, let's grab this. This will have to do. So there's a few different ways of doing it. And I think it really entirely depends on the size of your hands. So me personally, let me just take out the little standing card. I shuffle all of my cards this way, like this, because I don't have big enough hands to do it any other way. I always shuffle them like this. I know there's lots of men that practice, that do tarot reading, that shuffle them this way. Unfortunately, my hands, ow, they're just too small. So there's that technique. You can also do the split technique, which is what I have to do on some of my larger decks. So some of the decks, like the Living Altar deck, they're too big for me to hold and shuffle all in one go. So instead, I'll split it into a half, or I'll split it into, a quarter. I'll shuffle each section until I feel as though it's right to stop. I'll then shuffle each of them, put them together, do a couple of big-ish shuffles, and then I'll draw them that way. The other way that people do it, I've seen, I don't know how they do it. You know that technique where you split the deck in half, and then you hold them like this, and you and they go together. People do it that way. That was a terrible description. I apologize. And then the other way that people often do it is the children's card game method, where they just dump them out on the floor and then they just put them back into a deck again. That, I will say, is a really good technique if you have a brand new set of cards. So you'll often find that when you have a brand new set, you'll often find that for the first couple of shuffles and the first couple of readings, you might find that you get, say, a 1, 2, and a 3 next to each other. And it's often because you haven't shuffled them enough. And so doing that kind of initial put them all on the floor, shuffle them around kind of thing is a good way of doing it. It's also the way that people often do it if they read reverse cards. So obviously, if you have a deck of cards the right way up and you're shuffling them like this, you're never going to get a reverse card because all of the cards are going round the same way. If you do want to read reverse cards, putting them out on a surface or the floor and doing kind of this, and then shuffling them all together again is a good way to get cards the right way around and reversed cards, and it's relatively random. I personally don't do that technique, mainly because I don't like putting my cards on the floor, and inevitably I bend one or I step on it. I have been known to slip on cards before, the life of a clumsy person, so I typically just kind of shuffle them like this. Oh. Is journey work a form of astral projection? If anything, I would say it's the other way around. So I would personally say that all astral projection is a form of spiritual journeying, but not all spiritual journeying is astral projection. Mainly because you can spiritual journey to other planes that aren't the astral plane or this plane, or you can spiritually journey to mental planes. A lot of the time people will have their own mental place that they go to. So I'd say astral projection is journeying, but not all journeying is astral projection, if that makes sense. Have you ever cast a spell on someone? I have. Yep. I have done that. I typically try to not do that. I typically try to cast on situations rather than people, mainly because I find you get the best results when you're aiming at a situation. People are a lot more protected, even if they don't practice magic. They have their own protections. They have their own spirits. They have ancestors that will protect them. And so because of that, it's easier to work on a person it's easier to work on a situation than it is to work on a person. Does anyone have any tips on enhancing my crystal necklaces? I typically, what I will do is I will put, this is just how I've always done it. There's probably lots of different ways. But if I want to spell a necklace, for instance, enchant it, I will put it on a mirror dish and I will usually force energy into it whilst on the mirror dish. Or I will be doing spell work around it, and the crystals, the jewelry, whatever it is in the center while I'm doing it. So the energy that I'm putting into the spell around it is being channeled into the center. And then by placing it on a mirror dish, it ensures that all of that energy is kind of reverbing back into it again. That's just the way I've always done it. I'm sure there's lots of different techniques, but that is just the one that I use more often than not, I'd say, more often. During deity work, can you have a mix of pantheons come forwards? Oh, you definitely can. There are some people that will have multiple different deities from multiple pantheons come forward. It depends on how active your deities are as to whether or not they want to be present at that time. You will find that some deities will only want to work with members of their own pantheon. Some will be kind of chill and be fine to work with whoever. It really is dependent on who it is that's coming forward. I nearly went into the American national anthem then. How does that one work? I'm not even American. Like, goodness. I'm starting to lose my voice already. You can tell that I have not been talking very much recently. You can just tell. For everyone talking about sending links to Discord covens via the Discord server, advertising of other Discord accounts isn't permitted through the Discord server, mainly because we would get so much spam if it was. So if you do want to be starting a Discord coven, you're going to have to advertise it elsewhere, because on the Discord server, my Discord server, we don't permit advertising, because otherwise we'd just be overrun with it. I feel like that was kind of random if you weren't reading the chat at the same time as me, which honestly, most of you won't be, because I am behind. I am very behind. Big fan of yours. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. I have a question. What kind of crystal or stone would you recommend to leave on top of your tarot deck overnight? I have a few that I use, and it depends on what I need at that given moment. If I feel as though there's interfering energies that might interfere with the energy of the deck, I will leave something like obsidian on top, or black tourmaline, typically obsidian though, to kind of shield that energy. If I'm in a new place, for instance, I'll often take a piece of obsidian with me with the deck so that nothing interferes with it. If everything is all good and I just kind of want to keep it the same, I will use clear quartz. If I'm finding that a deck is being difficult to work with, or I'm struggling to work with a deck, I will leave labradorite on top or rainbow moonstone, because for me, I find them really good for connecting with psychic energy, and I will do it that way. So those are that was 4 technically, 4 that I use. I completely lost my train of thought then. Yeah, there's 4 that I use, although typically you can't even see them because my deck's up there. I don't have anything on them really, unless I absolutely need to, mainly because I kind of would run out of space if I did that. So you're saying it might be an entity and not 100% always mice. I mean, yeah, it could definitely be mice. It could definitely be mice. But when it comes to anything like mice, you can often really obviously tell if you've got mice in a house, because the droppings are really easy to spot. When it comes to entities, it's a little trickier. So if, for instance, you have, say, put out the humane traps, I'm going to emphasize this, humane traps, just to kind of contain them, and then you can release them somewhere safe and elsewhere. And nothing is happening. If you're having food left out and it's not being eaten, if there's no droppings or anything, then it's unlikely that it's going to be mice, and it's more likely going to be something else. That something else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a spirit, but equally it could be. So I'd say it's a case of ruling out other options first, and then looking into the kind of entities that it could be. What do you think of chaos magic? I don't really have many opinions on it. I think it's an interesting practice. It's very chaotic for me, a little too chaotic for me, but everyone is going to be different with that. And I know a lot of people that are really, really successful with chaos magic. So that's all good to me. All good to me. I think that's the way I stand with most things. When people are like, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? I mean, I don't really have any negative or positive. It tends to be just, what is that? I think someone just took a giant suitcase right past my front door, and it was unnecessarily loud. Okay, I'm going to say it now because I'm noticing there's a lot of all capitals. Can we not write in all capitals? It comes across as someone's going down the screen at me. And we really don't need it. I do read every question. At least I try to, unless it jumps. Hello, who can watch your spells video playlist? Anyone can. You just click it. You just click the spells section. It just opens. I mean, some of them aren't available anymore because I just didn't like them and I just took them down. So some of the spell videos are not there anymore, just because I didn't like them. The lighting was off, the audio was off, that kind of stuff. What stone is best for strengthening and supporting your energy while energy working? Clear quartz. Wonderful. It's fantastic as an energy magnifier. I love it. It's brilliant. How long have you been practicing witchcraft for? Around 15-ish years. I kind of lose track of the months, honestly. A while. Let's go with a while. Because otherwise I start feeling old and I start forgetting the months. I don't know what song that is now. I feel like I have just like a constant like broken record in my head that keeps like jumping around. Do you get cursed if you put a bad spell on a person? No, do you get cursed 3 times if you put a bad spell on a person? The threefold thing mainly came from Wicca. Yes, you do have lots of traditions and beliefs where if you do something, you get it back the same. So much like, say, karma, for instance, which is a very popular, very well-known thing where what goes around comes around. You get to you what you did to others. Wicca kind of took it a step further and said threefold. There are some traditions that say 7-fold, 11-fold, 13-fold. I've even seen some traditions that are 21-fold, which I think is just getting a little bit excessive. If you have your protections up, if you make sure you know what you're doing, there's lots of ways that you can avoid having anything negative come back to you. But when it comes to doing negative magic, you have to be prepared that you are going to have to make some kind of sacrifice. It's not really a sacrifice, not like, sacrifice, not like that, but like, if you're going to be doing something bad to someone, you have to expect that something bad might happen in return, just because that tends to be the way things go. But that does vary depending on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. So the whole threefold thing, it's largely found in Wiccan tradition, although there are a few other cultures that do follow the threefold, like times 3 thing. Definitely not everyone follows that. Can you recommend any books or resources for not magic? Where is it? Where is it? A book! I so wish it would just come like floating out of the bookshelf. Where is it? It's bright orange. It's literally bright orange. How can I not see this? I don't know where it is. That's the kind of state that my life is in right now. Since I redid this room, I lose something and I'm like, well, that's it. It's lost forever. Oh, where is it? You would think that it would be in the spell section, but it's not there. It's called Not Magic, and it's got a bright orange cover. It's really, really common on like Instagram and social media. It's bright orange hardcover book that's got the words Not Magic on it with some chilies. I don't know if anyone can help me out with the name of it because I don't know where it is. I found that to be a pretty decent book on the subject. It definitely isn't going to cover everything, but it does cover kind of a lot of different sources. Is voodoo bad? No. Voodoo is a religion. So a bit like saying, is Catholicism bad? The answer is no. It's just a religion like any other. Unfortunately, media has made a lot of stigma surrounding it to the point where it's almost ingrained in the Western mind that voodoo is evil, when it most definitely isn't. Not at all. It's just a religion like any other. How do you undo a sigil? Sigils are temporary anyway. So if you have created it and you've energized it upon creation, you can then just destroy it. Just get rid of it. Bin it, rip it, tear it. That's the same thing as ripping it. Wow, grammar. Set fire to it, bury it, wash it away. If you've already destroyed it and that's energized it, sigils are very short term. Unless it's a sigil that you are permanently, constantly re-energizing, A sigil will lose its power very, very quickly. It's a very minor form of magic that's often added into much larger spellworks and rituals. So if you have a sigil that you've energized, you can go about destroying that. You can cleanse it if you want, put some salt over it, sit it in a dish of salt or something, wash it away. That is a good option. But generally, it will just dissipate relatively quickly, really, in the grand scheme of things. Figure candle. Okay, how do you use figure candles? So a figure candle is essentially a representational candle that represents a person. So you might want to name that candle. So if you're doing a working on an archetype, so like a feminine archetype or a masculine archetype, you don't need to name the candles because they represent just femininity or masculinity or whatever it is that you want them to represent. If they are representing a person, when you are doing that working, you're going to want to name them. Some people, depending on your tradition, will even go as far as baptizing them. It really depends on your tradition, your culture. I personally just name them. So if I'm working with a figure candle, like a female figure, I will say, I name you, and then the full name, or as much as you know, of the person you want that to represent. Now, ideally, you can also add in tag locks. So underneath the candle, you can put a photograph, a full name. You can put items that belong to them inside. So like a piece of hair, something like that. It's very kind of standard representational magic or sympathetic magic. And then essentially, the workings that are done energetically on the candle will then manifest energetically in the life of that person. So it's not one of them, if I stick a pin in this candle, they will have a pin stuck in them. It's not like that. Instead, what you are doing energetically to the doll, you have linked the doll to the person energetically. So it will slowly begin to trickle energetically into their life. So a lot of people will use dolls as kind of either dolls or the figure candles as a form of protection. So they will keep that doll or that candle safe after they've named it, so that it's kept protected, so the energy of the person will be protected. And that's kind of the basis of how you use them. It very much depends on what you're using them for, but just the basics of using a figure candle to connect to a person, that's typically how it's done. Are there books on all mirror work? It's very rare to find a book on solely mirror magic. I mean, there probably are some out there. You will often find in protection books, you will find aspects of mirror magic being included in them. Same within any kind of more advanced book, you'll often find mirror magic is included, at least somewhere in it. People drip spots of their blood on sigils. I wonder what way that is. So people will typically use blood or any other kind of personal item, one, to strongly energize it, but also to attach it to you. So if you, for instance, have created a protection sigil and you've actually created it, it's on a piece of paper, for instance, and you don't want to have to carry that with you everywhere. Instead, what you can do is drip some blood onto it carefully. I want to make it very clear. Always take the utmost care when doing this. Or what I personally like to do is I take a piece of hair, because I have a lot of it. It's not like I'm going to miss any. And I kind of wrap it up, and I will actually bind the hair inside the paper. And then when that piece of paper, that sigil, is sitting at home on a shelf, the energy of that sigil is attached to me, even if I'm not carrying it around. So it allows you to do discrete workings and have that energy while you're out and about, even if you don't carry it with you. So that's kind of why that's done typically. Any thoughts on Aleister Crowley? A madman in so many ways. Bizarre. Lots of words kind of come to mind here. Extravagant. A little off his rocker, I think, but a genius in many things and very backwards in many others. He's one where I can't pin down how I feel about him, really. I need to read some more of his work, honestly. Sorry, the cat keyboard has come out. Yes, I refer to it as the cat keyboard. I literally just meow any song at just random people, and it gets me a lot of very strange looks. Do I have to work with deities or spirits in order to practice witchcraft? Not at all, not at all. So witchcraft is secular, non-religious. You don't have to have any deities, any kind of spirituality necessarily. You can practice witchcraft without deities. You can also practice witchcraft without working with spirits. There are a lot of people that do work with ancestors. There are a lot of people that do work with the fae or just spirits around them, but you 100% don't have to. So different paths are going to have different percentages of things. So for instance, it's a little harder to not work with spirits if you are, for instance, a hedge witch, because a hedge witch is someone that often travels between planes where you're often going to encounter spiritual beings of some kind or another. But if you are, for instance, a kitchen witch, you then don't have to include deities or spirits in your magical practice. It's entirely personal. Everyone is going to have their own unique kind of tradition going on. Each person is going to have their own way of doing things, their own likes and dislikes. So you definitely don't have to follow deities or work with spirits. Did I curse someone? No. Binding, however, I have done. My thing is, if I want to do a negative working on someone, I usually won't. Mainly because it's not worth the time and the effort. And if I want to do something negative to someone, they aren't worth my time and effort. Instead, what I will do is make everyone around them unbearably happy. You often find that the best punishment for people that do bad things is to make everyone else around them incredibly happy. Because people often hate other people feeling happy when they're not. So I find one of the best ways to avoid backlash from negative workings is to not do negative workings at all. Instead, you overwhelm everyone else in their life with positivity, and then they ultimately end up disliking their own situation because they don't feel the same happiness as everyone else. So I will bind people from their negativity, from their toxic behavior, toxic traits. But generally, when it comes to cursing, I will usually kill them with kindness, typically. Some people are saying not to manifest this full moon. What do you believe? I don't work with the lunar phases anymore. So as far as I'm concerned, I will continue to do workings whenever I need to do workings, because I personally don't connect with the moons anymore. I mean, I can still work with them, but I typically choose not to. I don't keep up with what this moon is, so I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I swear I have those trousers. If you got them from New Look, then you probably do. Nika, this question is a bit like asking what happens when you die. It's one of them where there's no person on earth that's going to be able to tell you what happens to bad people that do bad things, because only they are the ones that are going to experience what happens to them. It's a bit like the question of what happened. I get asked it all the time. What happens when you die? It's like, I don't know. What do I look like? A ghost? I don't know. And it's one of them where no one is going to be able to give you the answer, because it very much depends on your belief system, because certain people are going to believe very, very different things. So no one is going to have the answer. No one. I'm trying to find the next question. I was going to finish at 9 because I was going to watch I'm a Celebrity, but if I'm a Celebrity is on +1, then I can answer the rest of these questions, which I might do because I don't do these very often and I like getting to talk to you guys. Do you have a video on how to use playing cards as tarot cards? If not, do you plan on making one about it? I had no plan, but now I do. That sounds like a really, really good idea. I will probably end up doing that because that sounds really good. Nika, you have to remember here, right? I know that they've gone now, but they constantly write in the comment section the same thing, is that all of the live streams are chronological. I am probably half an hour behind everyone else. So it's going to take me a while to get around to questions. That applies to kind of everyone in here. It does take me a while to get around to questions because the chat moves so fast, I literally can't keep up with it if I was at the bottom. How can I tell if a gem or crystal is real? So many different options. It entirely depends, though, on what crystal you have. The color is often a dead giveaway. The texture, the price, hardness, so many different things. Certain crystals are going to look more obviously fake than others. Some crystals are not faked. Others are very commonly faked. So, for instance, turquoise, really frequently faked. Rose quartz, not so frequently faked, mainly because quartz is a very, very cheap stone. It's very easy to find, whereas turquoise is very expensive and it's a lot harder to find. So it really does depend on the crystal involved. I completely lost my train of thought there. How does doing spells on a person's surroundings work? Like, what do you do differently? So essentially, instead of doing the person directly, so for instance, if they want to get a job, and instead of doing it so that they have more likelihood of getting the job, instead you maybe allow jobs that suit their criteria better, that they're more likely to get, to have it line up with them. So if you have someone, for instance, that doesn't want to get a job, they're really lazy and they don't want to get a job, it's a lot harder to do a domination work where you force their mindset to change. That's really tricky. But what you could do instead is do some prosperity workings and some job workings around them, and then have their dream job basically be waved in front of their face. And then instead of having to force them to get a job, they'll be like, whoa, that is my dream job. Maybe I should, start doing this. And that tends to be the better way of doing it, because then you're not interfering quite so much. They have a lot more choice than, say, with domination work, where domination work essentially almost overrides their own opinions. I much prefer this technique where you let them, you kind of let them think that they're the ones that are changing their own mind, when actually you've influenced their surroundings to give them the best chance that they can get, basically. Have you ever listened to My Chemical Romance? What do you think about them? Their music is really powerful for witchy stuff, like for witchy stuff for me. I only like 2 My Chemical Romance songs. I know. I don't know, when I've always been more of a Panic at the Disco kind of person. Marilyn Manson, Panic at the Disco, that was my jam. Paramore. Oh, I have every album Paramore has ever released, except their new album, because it's not rock anymore. It's not like punk rock or whatever it was before. I only like 2 My Chemical Romance songs. The Black Parade, obviously. And Teenagers? I think it's called Teenagers. That's basically it. They're the only 2 songs that I actually like. I have DID. Can I still practice witchcraft? Of course, yeah. You definitely can. Obviously, you're going to have to alter things to suit you and your situation. And it's going to be obviously different, but you can definitely still practice. Definitely. What do spiritual awakenings feel like? Entirely depends on the person and how intense the spiritual awakening is. Spiritual awakenings can be lying awake for hours and hours, crying and doing meditations and shadow work and weeping and crying and angry and upset and happy and sad. And at the end of it, all of a sudden you go, whoa, that's what all that was for. Or spiritual awakenings can be very easy and smooth. It all depends on how much of an awakening you need. Some people need a bit more of a shove. They more need like a kick somewhere private. And some people might just need like a little tap on the shoulder. Like, it really depends person to person. There's no like one way a spiritual awakening is going to be. But usually people think that spiritual awakenings are going to be all like sunshine and rainbows. And a lot of the time spiritual awakenings require a lot of deep processing, a lot of shadow work to kind of get yourself out of it. And that can be really brutal, really brutal. How do you know when you're ready to start giving readings? I'm going to be really annoying here and give you the same answer that I give everyone, and that is, you will know when you know. Because genuinely, that is probably the only way I can have this work. Because like, it definitely entirely depends on you, your confidence level, your style of reading, situations, that kind of thing. What even is that song? I don't know who sings that song. Now that's in my head. Billie Eilish is gone. Now it's whoever sings this. What book do you recommend for baby witches? I've answered this one a lot today, but I feel as though it's probably one of the most significant questions that I get. There's a few that I really, really like. It depends on what you wait, what? I lost my train of thought then. It depends on what kind of magic you want to do. So a really simplistic, easy book is The Door to Witchcraft. Yeah, The Door to Witchcraft, a new witch's guide. Correct my glasses. A New Witch's Guide. It's available on Kindle. It's a really easy book. It's great if you've got a short attention span. It's super simplistic, doesn't go over too much, but it does cover some of the basic principles, which I do appreciate. Another book that I really like is Before You Cast a Spell by Carl McColman. That is a no-nonsense, no bullshit book. It's a little like Marmite. Some people hate it, some people love it. It does come at it from a Wiccan perspective, but you can read past it. It covers a lot of the kind of foundational principles, no spells, which I really appreciate because I hate when I see spells in a beginner book. Another book that I really, really like, but it's very much for more traditional witchcraft, is this one. This is Mastering Witchcraft, A Practical Guide for Witches, Warlocks, and Covens by Paul Husson. Husson. Not quite sure. It's dense. And mine is very old. It's dense, like little writing. And it goes over traditional ceremonial magic, which is, by the way, intense. So if you aren't into the higher magic, the ceremonial magic, this one won't be for you. But if you are interested in that, it's a really, really good book. But it's deep and it hurts my eyes. But it's good. It is good. Could you explain rituals, please? Yeah, I'm going to need more than that, unfortunately. I'm going to need more than that. What is your take on yoga? I can't even touch my toes. That should really tell you something, doesn't it? I don't mind yoga. I don't dislike. I just have no opinion on yoga. Like, it's not my thing personally. I know lots of people love it, just not me. Do you ever do what? Emily, I'm confused. It's not late, but my brain thinks it's late. Thoughts on goetic spirits? I don't really have any other than I would not mess with them. I have friends who work with them, and boy, not for me. Not for me. This book goes a lot into goetic spirits. I think it's this book anyway. Yeah, not for me. Stress me out, scare me a little bit. I'm good, thanks. I'm very good. Any books on dreams? I have one which is called Signs, Symbols, and Dream Interpretations. I'm not going to get it down because it's right up there. But it's a big, thick book that's just called Signs, Symbols, and Dream Interpretation. It's a great book for looking through the meanings of different symbols and signs. And it's good. Typically, when I come to dream interpretation, I find that every single person is going to be different because obviously different things are going to represent different things to people. So in one person's dream, a snake might be considered an evil symbol, but to another, it might represent a family member that they've lost who loved snakes, So when it comes to dreams and dream interpretation, I would say very dependent on person, but a book like that can be useful to start off with. What was your first spell ever, even if it didn't work? I have no idea. Literally no idea. I completely lost track of which spell was my first, which wasn't. I don't know. Mainly because when I first started practicing, I never wrote anything down, and that's something that I learned really quite the wrong way. I learned it the hard way, is that I wish at the very start I'd have written everything down. And that's why I often push people, like, it doesn't matter how ugly your book is, it doesn't matter how awful it is, write that shit down, because you are going to regret it. Because although, 6 months in, a year in, 2 years in, you might remember the stuff you started off with, you get to the point where you just don't anymore. And I have no idea what my first spell was. No idea. How does a cow tongue spell work? So typically tongues of any kind are used in gossip workings. At least, I think it entirely depends. Different cultures are obviously going to perceive cows in different ways. And so it's very much going to depend on your tradition and where you're from. In Europe, tongues are a symbol of communication. So oftentimes, if you want to stop gossip, people will use cow tongues. Now, I do believe that this spell in a similar way is used in North American folk magic. I don't know if it's done for the same reasons, but I know that in Europe, it's often done to stop gossip. I'm not sure if it's different over in American folk traditions, because I'm not American, obviously. So what you'll often do is you will cut into it, and you will put the name of the person you want to stop gossiping, and then you will stitch it back up again. You'll often add like some like negative herbs in there as well to kind of stop gossiping, and you'll close it up again, and then you bury it. And the act of burying it is to bury that gossip into the person. So rather than being able to speak it, you stop the communication by essentially like cutting it off. I don't know how that spell is done in different areas or if it's done for different things, but I think that's the one that I was referring to in the last live stream. So I have to end everything in jazz hands. I didn't even go to drama. Like, I wasn't even a drama kid when I was a kid. What's the best thing to start off with witchcraft? Basic principles. Energy work, centering, grounding, some form of mind clearing, often meditation, protection works, shielding, that kind of thing. And then you can kind of build up understanding kind of higher principles, circle castings, that kind of thing, and then kind of go from there. Oh, Panic is my vibe. Yeah, Panic. I love Panic at the Disco, but I started with Mona Lisa. That was my generation of Panic at the Disco. That was like, that song, man, still one of the best to have ever been created. That was kind of my era of Panic at the Disco, the kind of true 2000s emo shit. That was my generation. So for me, I love the earlier Panic at the Disco stuff. Not like the 9 in the Afternoon stuff, although I do like that song. But kind of anything from like the Mona Lisa era was kind of, that was my stuff. When it comes to witchcraft, should I stay with my heritage or can I still practice Sumerian stuff? That entirely depends on you. I don't know the cultures involved. I don't know the restrictions on that. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that one. Have I got 9 in the afternoon in my head? I think I've managed to get 9 in the afternoon stuck in my head. Where am I? No, I know where I am. Like, I'm in my filming room. I meant like in the chat. I just sounded like so lost. I was like, where am I? Like, what century is this? Oh. What do you think? Can you contact people who have already been reincarnated? I don't know. I will stick to spirit work. I think I'll just stick to spirit work. That is way easier because a lot of people, it takes a lot of past life regression for them to even remember themselves in a past life. So to then be able to communicate with people that were part of their past life, I think is basically going to be impossible for most people because the majority of people might remember their past lives as young children, but as they got older, they just don't remember it anymore. Can you manifest your own spiritual guardians, like creating a separate entity just from your intent? Yeah, so like fetches and familiars. Like servitors, spiritual beings that are created from your own energy to assist you in spiritual work. It's a good book. Was there a good book on servitors? I've never seen a good book on servitors. There's a good book on familiars, but that's kind of a different thing. You have to kind of servitors if you want more information about that. I think there's quite a few books. I just don't think I've read any that are decent yet. So yeah, I'll have to keep my eye out for books on servitors, but I think what you're after is servitors. How often can you practice tarot on yourself? Whenever you want. But what I will say is, don't constantly keep doing the same question over and over and over again, expecting a different answer. If you're going to do readings on yourself, instead do general readings, daily readings, weekly readings. Asking the same question over and over again isn't really going to get you anywhere, because obviously the future is ever changing. Every decision we make is going to alter the outcome. So it's very difficult to get a concise answer on a topic if you ask the same question every day. So instead, just do kind of like a general, like daily or weekly thing. Do you have to lose everyone and everything for spiritual awakening? No, not at all. No. Spiritual awakening is nothing about losing people, nothing. I mean, you might lose people by changing who you are, by progressing as a person. Spiritual awakenings can be anything. They can be a deep shadow work. They can be traumatic loss. They can be progression, personality change, healing, growth, development. They can be moving to a new place and finding yourself again and reawakening something in yourself. They don't involve losing everyone and everything. They can do, but it's not like it's a requirement. There's no like tick box for a spiritual awakening. It's just like it happens how it happens. Sometimes you lose people, sometimes you don't. It really depends. It just depends on the person. Rituals and spells. Oh, tricky one. Very tricky to define. A ritual is typically more ceremonial in nature. It often has a process that is repeatable, let's say. I'm trying very hard to try to define this in my head, and it's very difficult. So a lot of rituals contain repeated actions. So people might open and close a circle. They might work in certain patterns and certain directions. They might be calling on deities and spirits and other entities into that working. They might be working with other people in a ritual setting, which is almost a specific setting for spiritual work. Spell work can be anything from stirring some honey into your tea in a specific direction to chanting, trance work. Ritual is much more specific in its nature. It's often done in a specific setting, in a specific way, for a specific reason. And it's often repeated. So like you might do the same ritual again and again. Whereas with spell work, a spell might be a jar, or it might be a pouch, or it might be kitchen magic as you're cooking. Like they're almost, one is more casual, one is more formal. There is definitely a better definition for that, but off the top of my head, I just can't find it. Do you have a list or a video filled with your favorite witchcraft books? No, but I am slowly but surely coming out with books that I like on different topics. So the next one that's going to be coming out is on fairy witchcraft, fairies, just connection to fairies and fairy magic. That's the next one that's coming out. After that, I think it's going to be beginner books. I think it depends on how fast I read, because before I do any of these videos, I always reread the book. And for the fairy book, I had to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books just for the fairy video, and I still have 2 to go. So it's taken me a while, but I'm going to do like books that I like on each specific category rather than like a 5-hour long video on every book that I like, just because I feel as though that's kind of easier. Oh, this does not sound good. A lot of spells often mentions essential oils to either put in bath rituals on yourself or on objects. Is diffuser oil good? No. Diffuser oil is 9 times out of 10 fragrance oil. It's pure synthetic oil. So essential oil is a pure, concentrated essence of that plant through the distillation process. Fragrance oil or diffuser oil is often purely synthetic. It has no natural fragrance in it. It's almost entirely a chemical that's designed to smell a certain way. So like candles, for instance, most candles aren't created with essential oils. They're created with fragrance oil, which is more stable than essential oil. So it's better for diffusers and that kind of thing. But it usually is not any percentage of natural. So if it calls for essential oils and you don't want to use essential oils, use instead infused oils. That's a good way of doing it. So if it, say, asks for rose essential oil, you might want to use instead a rose infused oil. So you put it in like an oil and you let it steep and sit for several weeks, and you kind of shake it and turn it and that kind of thing, and then use that in baths and stuff. I'd say don't use fragrance oil. If you're going to use essential oil, please make sure that you are diluting it appropriately. Essential oil should never be used on the skin. It should never be used undiluted. And it should always be used with great care. Never eat it. Never eat it. So definitely say, what was I lost everything that I was going to say. So yeah, you can just use, what was I going to say? I just, poof, gone. Yeah, use infused oil instead. Got it. Got it. That took me a while. Haha, I got Panic in the Disco stuck in Phil's head. Wahaha, this is my end goal. I always do that though. There's always something that I get stuck in people's heads. It's usually the Winnie the Pooh theme song though, and it's not this time. This is good. It's different. What's your favorite pagan holiday? I love Samhain. Samhain is my jam. I always love Samhain. I always have. Halloween is my favorite, like, standard holiday. Samhain is my favorite kind of witchy holiday. I also like Beltane and Letha. I love summer and sunshine. I love the symbolism at Beltane, and I love the sunshine at Letha, and then I love spooky. I love the spooky season. So for me, I absolutely love that. Have you ever created your own spells and rituals from scratch? I always create my own spells and rituals from scratch. I don't even remember a time when I used a spell or a ritual out of a book, ever. I don't think. I always prefer tailoring them. For me, tailoring workings is like the best thing that I can do because it just makes it more personal to me. Do you know the Witch of Wonderlust? Would love if you and her collaborated. I know Olivia, kind of. Let's call it acquaintances. We've had like a couple of Instagram chats. You know, we've had some interactions. I'm not really planning any collaborations anytime soon because, you know, pandemic. And also everyone lives in America, and I am like, I think there's only a few witchy channels in the UK. There's Harmony, Nice, and there's me. And I don't really know of any other because I don't really watch Witchcraft YouTube. So I don't know. I'm also kind of scared of collaborations. They kind of freak me out. Yeah, they kind of scare me. I'm not really good with people. Like, I'm really bad with people. I'm not a people person. I'm an animal person. Like, leave me alone with a cat or a ferret or a guinea pig and I'm happy. I mean, any other pet works too, but they were just the ones I thought of at the top of my head. People scare me. What do you do with a spell jar once the spell is done? So are we referring to after the spell is complete, or after you've finished putting everything in it? If you've just finished putting everything in it, you're going to need to let it sit for however long it's going to take to manifest, and then you're going to need to re-energize it as appropriate. If we are talking about once it's manifested, then it's a case of either you can let the energy drain out of the working, and then if you need to reactivate it again, you can energize it again, or you can dismantle it, taking it apart, taking the ingredients out, cleaning it out, disposing of them as is appropriate. Really depends on whether it's you've just finished making it or whether you want it done and like gone. Whoa. I think 5 words tried to come out of my mouth then. in one go. Do witches ever struggle with skepticism or doubt in the spiritual sense? Oh yes, 100%. So many people are get to this point where they feel nervous that what they're doing isn't real. What if it's just in my head? What if I'm doing it wrong? I think a lot of people do, and it definitely comes and goes, and it's something that you have to work through. A lot of the time, to work through it, you might want to instead focus on learning, reading, researching, doing something new, focus on divination, that kind of thing, and then kind of go from there. Who are your favorite YouTubers, witchcraft related or not? Ooh, let me see. Who is on my current list. Like, let me just go off my subscriptions. Let me see, who do I watch a lot? Stephanie Harlow. I watch a lot of Stephanie Harlow. A lot. Penguin Zero. I like Penguin Zero. Who else do we have? Who else do we have? Pretty Pastel Please. I love her channel. Plus, the bird stays. The bird is so cute. Oh, S2W. I basically just watch all of the e-boys. Oh, no, I don't watch Memulous. I don't know why. I'm just not a huge fan of Memulous. I'll watch I'm Alex. I'll watch S2W and Willany, and I'll watch James Marriott. Oh, Sophie does life. Soph does life. She's a British YouTuber. Oh, Emily Boo. If you love gothic alternative content, Emily Boo, she's so cute. I love her. I want to give her a hug. And yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube. So if I was going to truly go through everyone, I think I might run out of time because there's a lot of people that I watch. What keeps you going? I'm interested in started, but I want to know what keeps your fire and dedication going. What fulfills you about the work? I am a sucker for knowledge. If I can learn something new, fantastic. And something that's always fascinated me for my entire life is occultism and witchcraft and anything a little bit odd and unusual and just a bit, off center a little. And so for me, it's knowing that no matter how much I learn, there's always something new to learn. There's always something that you can take it further with. And that's something that I've always struggled with everything else. I love natural history and I love science and zoology and conservation and all that kind of stuff. But when I was studying paleontology and I studied geology, there's only so much that you can ever know, because there's kind of certain things that are known and that's it. That's kind of all you can really learn. Whereas when it comes to witchcraft and occultism in general, there's so much out there. There's so many different topics that I don't think you could ever run out of information. And I can appreciate never running out of information. Can you use holy water in magic, and how? I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can use it just like you use moon water. Add it into baths, add it into spiritual cleanses, add it into water magic, use it to dissolve sigils. I'm sure you can probably essentially use it in any other way you would use water. It's just specifically holy water. I just have never used it, never got hold of any, never really felt any need to have any, so I just never did. How do you contact a deity that you want to work with? Often it's a case of studying, learning about them, and then they will often reach out to you if they want to. You can call on them during dream states or meditations, but really, if they don't want to work with you, they're not going to work with you, and they'll let you know if they want to work with you. So it should be pretty apparent if they do want to work with you, and if they don't, it will be very much like a shut door kind of thing. How do I know when I'm ready to work with a deity? You just know. You will just get to this point where you're like, you know what, I kind of fancy branching out into deity work. And then you'll just start doing it. It's one of them. It's quite difficult because there is no set time. It's not like, oh, well, 3 years and 2.5 months in, you'll want to do this. It is very different for everyone. Some people will want to do deity work immediately. Some people might want to do deity work never. So it is really, really personal in that. Have you ever used the Deviant Moon Tarot deck? I haven't, no. No, not part of my collection. Do you know about the book, the Element Encyclopedia of 1,000 Spells? Because I found it in my house with one about symbols. It's in the same series, different author, but same title. I'm not sure if it's legit. Well, I have just there the encyclopedia of 5,000 spells. I'm assuming that the 1,000 is just a smaller version of the 5,000. That book is historic spells. So the whole point of it is it's a reference guide for thousands of spells that are found in different cultures and different manuscripts and texts. Some of them into the 90s and the early 2000s, or going back through history into the 15th, 16th centuries. So it's essentially a book that gives you an idea of how magic was practiced through the ages, and it specifically states, and I do suggest people follow this, that the spells in the book should not be followed word for word, herb for herb, item for item, because a lot of the things that were obviously used in, say, the 16th century were exceptionally toxic and they didn't realize that they were toxic, or they knew they were toxic, but they were using doses that were ridiculous to the point where it's going to cause some serious harm. So it is a legit book with actual spells that have been used by people throughout history, but I wouldn't necessarily take the things that are in it word for word. If you're going to kind of use anything, adapt it, tweak it to make it work with what you're doing and what you feel comfortable with, and with modern safety, obviously, because I've seen some in there that are, I sure as hell would not want to work with. Have you ever played Animal Crossing? I have played every Animal Crossing game that has been released. When I say that I am an Animal Crossing girl, I really mean it. I got Wild World when I was a lot younger, and I have played every Animal Crossing game since. I have New Horizons on the Switch, and I love it. I play it every single night. I'm obsessed with it. And then I really want to go back to New Leaf again. I really should go back to Wild World, because that was like, I loved that Animal Crossing so much. 9 in the afternoon. Yeah, I knew it was. Everyone asks me about my music taste. Genuinely, if you want to know what my music taste is, second channel, I talk about my music taste a lot. Hex, yeah, it's linked on the channel somewhere. And Instagram, because I'm always posting stories with like my favorite song of that day on it. So if you ever want to know what music taste is, there is where you can go and find it. Do you listen to any pagan type music? Yes, I have a playlist on my channel that is all of my favorite pagan songs. My favorite artist is Damn the Bard, and I also have an entire video on the channel that is just my favorite pagan artists. So that is down there. Do you attend Witchfest and summer camps? I don't attend summer camps, but I do attend Witchfest Midlands, because London is just too far away for me, but I do go to Midlands. Unfortunately, this year it was cancelled, but I'm hoping to be able to go next year, hopefully. I really miss the Witchfest. I go to the fairy festivals, I go to Witchfest, I go to a lot of pagan events around the UK, because I go with the business, and then I end up going myself as well. I'm like, bye guys, I'm just gonna wander around the shops. You good with that? And then I end up bumping into someone that I know and buying too many things. That's usually how it goes. Astral projection advice. I don't really have any. I don't purposefully astral project. I have a book on astral projection that I'm going to have to read and then get back to you on whether it's good or not. I typically always, I like having my feet on the ground. I'm not an astrally person. I used to astral project when I was younger, but not anymore. What's a first good spell for baby witches? What is a first good spell for baby witches, and when do you know to start your first spell? No spell. No spell. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is people that talk about how like, oh, this is a good spell for baby witches, and you read it and it's like, yeah, but only if they know things first. When it comes to magical practice, always good to have a foundation of knowledge. When you have a good foundation of knowledge, you can then go on to practice whatever it is that you want. Although, of course, always take into consideration that some things are going to require more commitment and learning than others. So, for instance, ceremonial magic is likely going to take more studying before you can actively start practicing than, say, elemental magic. because one has a lot of ritual, a lot of ceremony, and a lot of background to it. Every spell is going to require energy work. It's going to require intention. You're going to have that foundation of knowledge. Typically, people will start with protection workings because there's not much that can go wrong with them. But of course, always good to have a good foundation of knowledge. And when you know you're ready to start practicing is when you know how to get yourself out of situations. So if you know your basic foundation of knowledge, and if you know that if something went wrong, you can fix it, then that's probably the good way to start. I know that a lot of beginners jump into it way too soon before they fully know how to get themselves out of situations, and they can get themselves in some really deep water really, really quick. So always good to go in knowing more than you need than knowing less, because that's just way safer to get yourself out of anything. What are ways to be able to practice tarot more to deepen your understanding if you don't have others to practice with? Daily draws. Daily draws. Literally 1 card a day, 2 card a day, 3 card a day, whatever you fancy. Just pull the card, see if you can get the meaning out of it, have a look at the symbolism in the card, read the book, get some understanding of it. And then every single day do that. And slowly, you'll end up understanding every single card to the point where you can just take it out the deck and you know exactly what it represents. And that's the way a lot of people do it, because there's a lot of cards, and trying to learn them all in one go is really, really difficult. So kind of learning them really slowly is probably a good way to go. Is there such a thing as a healer, like being able to heal others? You can assist in healing others, but you're not going to be able to miraculously heal others, if that makes any sense. So it's not like a healing class. I'm going full gaming here, not what I was intending, but it's not like a healing class where you can just miraculously heal people. You can do healing workings, but then anyone can do healing workings. It's not like a set person that can do healing workings. Anyone can choose to do healing workings to assist in physical, emotional, energetic healing, but it's just not going to be like a miraculous thing. What does energy feel like to you? Is it tingling? It just jumped. Sorry, I read half of it and then it jumped. I was like, damn. I don't know where I was. Oh, I watch Rem Life. I love Remy. I love Remy. I just whacked myself way too hard. I love Remy. Absolutely love it. I listen to a podcast as well. It's one of the only podcasts that I listen to is the Pretty Basic podcast. I listen to it while I'm cooking. Oh my God, where was I? Where was I? I genuinely don't know where I was. Wait, have I gone past it? I think I've already gone past it. Oh, I have. My voice goes like up like 4 octaves and I'm surprised. What does energy feel like to you? Heat, tingles, cold? It feels like static electricity. Best way I can describe it. Some energy feels heavy. So especially if there's very dense energy, so antiques especially, anything that's got very heavy, dense, clogged, or negative energy feels very heavy to me. And it will actually physically like weigh me down, weigh my arm down. And anything else feels like staticky, tingly kind of stuff. Can you hear the dog? It's barking again. What makes you like some shows with witchcraft misinformation and not others? It depends on whether that information is going to negatively impact a group of people that are already negatively impacted. So I love American Horror Story Coven. I love the premise of the show. But once again, it's feeding into the stigma that traditions practiced by people of color around the world are negative. And it's something that we are still fighting to fix that. There's a lot of people who truly believe that voodoo is evil, when in reality, it isn't. And that is why I dislike that in particular. I don't like the craft because it uses too much real magical practice in it. And so it led to a lot of people thinking everything in it was real. because they used actual spellwork and ritual in the first half of the film. So there was a ginormous witch fear, especially, I noticed, especially in the UK. I don't know if it was the same everywhere else. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when the craft came out, because a lot of parents saw the real magical practice in the start of the craft and thought that all of it was real, and it created panic. I don't like some aspects of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina because it relates witchcraft to devil worship. And obviously we know that's not the same thing. But equally, I like all of these things in some ways because it is fantasy based. If that makes any sense. So like, I like the premise of the shows and I can thoroughly enjoy. I don't really like the craft because I just don't really like the craft, just personal taste. I like American Horror Story. I like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, but there are aspects of it that I don't like because they negatively stigmatize something that is already got a lot of stigma around it that really shouldn't. I feel as though I took way too long to answer that, but yes. Where can someone use moon water? Spiritual baths, in baths, spiritual cleansings, in offerings, in water magic, in scrying, so many different options. Literally so many different options. Do you have a video on how to learn tarot cards, readings, etc.? No, but I will add it to the list because I'm working my way through the divinations. I've already done pendulums. I've done the differences between Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot and Oracle. So I'm tempted to kind of start doing some more in the divination section. Do you use Hecate to help in your spell work? No. I have a video on the deities that I work with, which are Bridget and Ceridwen. Do you ever consider writing a book? I do, yes. I have half of one done. I'm a perfectionist though, and a procrastinator, which is like the worst combination of things you can possibly be because I simultaneously don't get anything done and want it perfect. So I will have to fix that and finish it eventually. Have you read Psychic Witch? If so, what did you think? I have it in my cabinet, in my apothecary cabinet. Oh no, do I? Oh no, it's there. It's right at the end. I moved it. I haven't read it yet though. I have said that I'm going to be doing the beginner witch books and the fairy magic books videos, and I said that months ago, and it's taking me ages to read them because I'm working and I'm doing videos and life, just life. And I haven't really got around to doing it yet. I have sets of books that I read for work, for the YouTube, and then I have sets of books that I read personally. And typically the personal books get put on hold when I add a book onto my business or like work reading list. So I haven't got round to reading Psychic Witch yet, but I will hopefully like it, hopefully. I have very little patience when it comes to making something. Is it okay if I buy a Book of Shadows? You mean like someone else's Book of Shadows? If so, that kind of negates the point of a Book of Shadows. Are we talking about an empty book that you can write yourself, or just a book full of information? In which case, that really isn't a Book of Shadows anymore because it's not your personal journal, that's someone else's. So it's more of a grimoire than a Book of Shadows because it's not your work. Is this making any sense? Like, yes, you can buy like grimoire type things like other people's work, but it isn't going to be a Book of Shadows because a Book of Shadows is your personal journey. That makes sense. What colors are your Switch? My Switch, I got the Animal Crossing Switch. I saved up because I knew it was coming out and I'm like, I need this. So I got the Animal Crossing Switch. So it's mint green and pastel blue. And I love it. Have you ever used the Great Unknown tarot deck? No. I have the Wild Unknown tarot deck. Does that count? Not the Great Unknown. No. Could you explain what Witchfest is? Yeah, Witchfest is essentially it's a giant gathering of witches that happens in the UK every year. It started in the early 2000s, I think. I think it started late 90s, early 2000s. And it happens in Croydon. I think it's Croydon in London every year, or it kind of moves locations, but currently it's in Croydon. And it essentially happens once a year. I think the London one is in November and the Midlands one is in August, June, May. It's in May. So it's May and November, I think. And essentially it's just a giant gathering. You have speakers. So we are lucky enough to have Ronald Hutton. Anyone knows who Ronald Hutton is? He comes and does a talk every year. We have talks by just bunches of different people, different authors and writers, and people just coming together. And it's just loads of stalls, events, pagan music, pagan dancing, events, shows. There's usually an after party. So the last time I went to Witchfest Midlands, I got to see Dan the Bard perform because he's obviously kind of local-ish. And it's amazing. It's basically just like one giant party for pagans and witches and Wiccans to just come together, learn information, buy lots of stuff, eat lots of food, drink lots of mead, and just like chill. It's great. It's so good. If I could go to Croydon, I would, but unfortunately, London is like 6 hours away from me. And yeah, I could get the train, but trains scare me. People scare me. London scares me. So I think I'll just stick to Midlands. The astral projection book is The Art of Astral Projection. No, The Art and Practice of Astral Projection. I'll go grab the book. It's just easier, isn't it? Oh, please don't fall off the sofa. Actually, I have two on astral projection. I have this one, Projection of the Astral Body. This is 1929. So it's by the same people that do the British goblins and the fairy faith in Celtic countries. You can tell because this border is like always the same. It's just in different colors. So I have this one. And then I have this one. This is The Art and Practice of Astral Projection by Ophiel. And I haven't read this yet, but this is a vintage book. I don't know if it's still in print. I know that a lot of the vintage books that I get aren't in print because I get them from a local vintage shop and most of them are out of print. But those are the two I have. I have not read them yet. So I can't say whether it's any good or not. Is my phone ringing? No one even knows my phone number. What is going on? So like when it comes to these, read at your own discretion because obviously I can't tell if they're good or not. I've not read them yet. What are some ways you can connect with the element of air? I have a full video on working with the different elements. Lots. I think there's 5 videos right now on the channel. I've lost where I was. Ah, right. Ha! That was loud, sorry. I found it. Do you work with Hecate? Nope. Nope. Is it possible to change a minor course of fate through spellwork? A friend of mine who is psychic recently told me that I am going to get some heavy news. I mean, I think that's basically the definition of magic, isn't it? It's altering the potential outcomes of future events with the energetic shifting in the now. Isn't that basically what spellwork is? It's altering the threads of fate almost through actions and kind of preemptive change. I mean, I'm not going to say that you can definitely avoid it because some things in life are set and it's going to happen anyway, but you could soften it a little, maybe. Do you prefer Oracle decks or Tarot decks? I like both. I use Tarot for more hard-hitting answers. I use Oracle for daily readings. Depends on how I'm feeling. Cat or a dog person? Neither. Both? Is that an option? I love cats. I love dogs. I want both. I can't have them. Well, I can't have cats because I'm allergic to them, but I will get a dog eventually. Hot take on the movie Practical Magic. Meh. I liked it at face value. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. I will watch it again. I prefer it to The Craft, but on a scale of The Craft to Harry Potter, Practical magic is like here. It's about 40% love. That's about as far as opposite goes, really. Oh, Melissa, I'm so sorry if I've missed your questions. I've been kind of skipping through them so fast. Feel free to put them in. I'm going to be on for like another 20 minutes. I will try and answer as many as I can. Sorry you have so many questions, but I remember you saying you have anxiety. Has it ever affected your ability to work? If so, how did you get past this? Oh yeah, completely. I'll be honest, if people want to see it, I might talk about my anxiety and how I manage it on my second channel, mainly because I don't want to trigger anyone in the stream, like while it's live. So if you would like me to do a video on my anxiety, because I'm quite open about it, and my opinion is that if my hardship with my anxiety can help someone else not have to deal with that, then I'm happy to share it. Do you know what I mean? So like if you want to know more about my anxiety disorder, I will maybe make a second channel video on it, or just a live stream on the second channel. I can always do that. Any plans to release a Dream Island code for Animal Crossing? No, not yet. No, my island is not there yet. I take it slow. Take my island slow. Maybe when it's nice and finished, maybe. Can you do witchcraft in other countries? What? As in, like, can I go to another country and still do witchcraft? Yes. Can you do witchcraft for people in other countries? Yes. I think that's the answer to that question. My brain is like, whoo, mush. I've already answered that question, I do believe. Pretty certain that I've already answered that question, like an hour ago, I think. What magical energies do ocean argates possess? That is something that can be very easily Googled. If you just Google like magical properties ocean argate, you will just get thousands of websites with like hundreds of pages of like answers. And that's way easier than me having to Google it and then say it to you via here. It's just way easier doing it that way. Also, I don't trust that my internet won't just go if I open another tab, because it might do. It might do. You're almost hitting 1,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers. Congrats, by the way. Did you ever think that you would get that much recognition or become a teacher for thousands of people around the world? Thank you very much, firstly. Thank you to anyone that supports me, honestly. It really means a lot to me. I had no idea. I made the channel when I was in a really bad place to distract me, because the witchcraft channels on YouTube had helped me kind of get out of that bad place. So on my way out, I kind of made a channel and I was like, okay, I want to get to 1,000 subscribers. I've always wanted to get a channel to 1,000 subscribers. That's all I care about is 1,000 subscribers. And it took me like a year. And I remember on Christmas, I hit 1,000 subscribers and I nearly died. It was like the best day ever. And then it just kept going. And I wasn't expecting that in the slightest. That was kind of never my plan with any of this. So the fact that you guys have actually stuck around, that like means more to me than I think I can ever share. Honestly, I don't know how to process it. I kind of haven't. I still feel as though I have like 2,000 subscribers. And I kind of like that actually, because when I think about the numbers, it kind of scares me. Like it really, really kind of scares me. Oh, it jumped! Right, I've got 15 minutes before I'm a Celeb comes on Catch Up TV, so I'm gonna have to move it. move it, and finish getting through these as fast as I can. I do these every month though. So if you would like to come to the next one, let me know. If you want me to do Instagram lives where you like send me, I'll post like a little chat box thing and you can like type a question and then I can answer as many as I can. I can do that as well. Because I like answering these. I just can't answer them all. Where was I? Oh my god. I don't even know where I was. Oh my god. Do I have to be Wiccan to celebrate Yule and Samhain and others? Not at all. None of these are even Wiccan. Like Samhain, Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, they were all taken from pre-pagan traditions. It's essentially a conglomeration of different traditions that have been collected into Wicca by Gerald Gardner and, everyone else in that era. So all of these traditions come from much older religions. So things like Beltane is a British, I think it's a Celtic fire festival. It's a Celtic fire festival. There's like 4 fire festivals that are found largely in Celtic regions, and then you have a lot of Germanic festivals like Yule, and it's just kind of like a collection. So you don't have to be Wiccan to celebrate them. You don't have to be pagan to celebrate them. You can be a witch and celebrate them. You can be pagan and celebrate them. A lot of these celebrations are still celebrated in the cultures that they came from, but they're called different things. So for instance, in England, Imbolc is celebrated, but it's celebrated as Candlemas rather than Imbolc. So it very much varies. Different places will often celebrate them anyway in their culture if that's where they came from. Why have I got May It Be by Enya stuck in my head now? I don't even know where half of this comes from. It just like... Any plans for more stories like the werewolf one? Yes. I really want to do more of the folklore stories like the werewolf of Cannock Chase. I don't know where to put them though, whether to put them on this channel or the second channel. They take a lot of time, so it's taking me a really long time to research them, especially alongside the main channel videos. So it's definitely a slow progress, but I'm hoping to come up with a few. I want to do the Highgate vampire. I've got a few other fairy ones I really want to do, and I don't know whether to do them on here because I know a lot of you really like the stories, like the fairy stories, and I don't know whether to put them on the main channel or the second channel. Let me know. I'm not sure. Oh, Melissa, I have a full video on Beltane. Full. It's like an hour long. I don't know how long it is. It might be an hour. I'm not sure. I have a full video on Beltane with like everything you can do to celebrate it. That's way more in depth than anything I could do here because my brain is like mush right now. My brain is literally like mush right now. Oh yeah, the live streams are not going to be on Instagram instead of YouTube. Instead, they're going to be YouTube and Instagram. It's just I've literally been on here for like 4 hours. Like I can't keep doing it. Yeah, so a lot of people are saying second channel, story of anxiety disorder. That is fine. Yeah. What is crossing and uncrossing? So essentially a crossing working is a working that negatively crosses someone else's path to hinder them. And then uncrossing is the removal of such workings. Heard people say that hexing, oh my God, it bounced. Heard that some people say that hexing is only part of some cultures. Is this true, or can anyone hex? The term comes from German, I do believe, hexe, German, but the practice is called thousands of different names all around the world. It's just the principle of putting negative working on another person to different extremes. So jinx, curse, hex, lots of different terms, similar kind of scale spectrum. Hexing is found in almost every culture that I can think of. It just probably has different names, kind of like how fae are present around the world, but they have different names depending on the culture. What is a conjuring spell? So conjuring is typically the act of summoning spirit. So it depends on the culture that it comes from, but often conjuring and summoning are considered to be kind of synonymous with each other, although don't shoot the messenger. I'm going to have to double check that. But from my experience anyway, they're essentially just like the same term. Should someone use poppets for healing another person who has cancer? How would they do it? It's not going to, it's very difficult to talk about, but a poppet or magic isn't going to be able to heal. It can assist in the healing, but it isn't going to heal by itself, if that makes sense. So I'm going to try, I've got like 8 minutes. So let's do this quick. So doll, name the doll, add stuffing into it. Healing herbs inside the area of the doll where you need healing, whether that's the area where the issue is. Items that represent the person, full name, date of birth, photograph, items that represent them, something like that. Fill it with some more stuffing inside, close it all up again, keep it in a safe place, do workings for healing on the doll. Energy in the doll affects the energy of the person and trickles over into the physical plane to assist in healing. It isn't going to do anything by itself necessarily, but it can help to assist in mental states, the way people feel, the way medications may work, that kind of thing. I'm not making any claims here for reference. The magic is going to miraculously be able to fix things. I jumped again. Ah! Take on empaths. I think it's unfortunate that some people are empaths. I think that people often think that they're empaths when they're not. They're just maybe connecting with the emotions of another person. I think it's, I don't really have many opinions on it, to be fair. Half of these I think I've already answered earlier on. Yes, let us all thank the amazing mods, because Phil literally got back from work halfway through this stream and still came on to help mod. Thank you, Phil. I need to give you a hug, but not during COVID. After COVID. Definitely after COVID. Yes, Phil, you are still my best friend. That has not changed. I have done mirror magic in the past, yes, I have. How do I get witchy decor like bones or such humanely? Where do you get yours? Okay, right. Ducklings, I got from a taxidermist who works with the RSPCA. They were ducklings that were not accepted by the mother and had to be hand-reared, but they didn't survive. So they were given to the taxidermist to taxidermy them so that they could bring joy in death as they did in their short lives. Skulls are all, none of them are culled. They're all naturally found skulls from animals it is legal to keep in the UK. There are a lot of animal parts that are not legal in the UK. For instance, bats, it's illegal to own British bats in the UK, that kind of thing. All of my skulls that I have are found skulls because we have lots of deer here. So a lot of the time you'll find antlers and skulls and that kind of thing just kind of lying around. Have you ever tried glamour magic? No, I haven't. Never really bothered using it. Never really felt the need to use it, honestly. Do you have any opinions on using plastic in spellwork? Entirely depends on the person. Some people will really struggle to use it. Other people will find that it works okay. Plastic is not a conductor of energy. So if you struggle with energy manipulation, you might struggle with working with plastic because it does kind of dull it. So that's why people often use wood, metal, that kind of thing. I don't work with Hecate. I've had so many questions about Hecate today. I don't work with Hecate. Never worked with Hecate. Don't really plan on working with Hecate. Not one of the deities that I connect with or work with in any way. So that is the end of the stream tonight. I need to sit somewhere else in a different place because my ass hurts and I'm like rammed up into the arm of the sofa here just to get the angle. So thank you very, very much for everyone that's joining. Thank you so, so much for all the moderators. You guys have been absolutely awesome. I know that Lance has already gone, but thank you, Lance, if you end up seeing this. I really, really appreciate it. you guys are awesome. You really help the stream, because otherwise, like, damn, that would get really, really hard to do because there's so many people. So thank you very much. Follow me on Instagram if you want updates of any kind of Instagram live streams. The link or the kind of username is down in the description box. Second channel is linked down there as well. It's on like the little sidebar on the YouTube channel if you want to see like the makeup content or just kind of the vlog stuff. And yeah, I'll see you next month for another live stream, or next week for another video. Okay, I'm going to go and watch I'm a Celebrity and watch people drink horrible substances that they don't want to drink for our entertainment, because that is what British TV is all about. So have a good night, everyone. Stay safe. I hope you're all having a marvelous, magical day. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.